All right, it is Monday, December 21st at 7:49 p.m. I'd like to call the committee of the whole meeting to order. The clerk would call the roll whenever she's ready.
Ms. Wu?
Here.
Mr. Sachs?
Here.
Ms. Hersey?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mr. Colebrook?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
I'm here.
Mayor Marlin?
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Clerk. All right, so first up on our agenda for tonight is approval of the minutes of the previous committee of the whole meeting from November 16th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Move to approve the minutes from the committee of the whole November 16, 2020 meeting.
Is there a second? Moved by Councilmember Hersey and seconded by Councilmember Brown. Any changes or discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Sachs?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes. All right, that motion passes. The meeting minutes are approved. Are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to public input and presentations. We're going to do public input first, and we have one presentation on the draft traffic stop pilot program procedural guidelines coming after that. So,
And Jared?
Yes, Dennis.
So we do have a representative from Emulsicoat who's going to be calling or joining us. And I guess I'm not sure whether we would want to reserve his comments for the discussion itself to maybe address that topic, item number 7. But I see he's raised his hand, so I don't know what his interest is to make a statement earlier or not. Maybe you could ask him.
I will certainly do so, and I would certainly accept and plan to call on the representative from Emulsify at the discussion time, if that is their preference. But
All right.
when I get to them in public comment, I will ask them if that's their preference. Okay, so we're going to do public input. Anybody who wishes to speak at this committee of the whole meeting for public input, please raise your hand, and I will call on folks in the order in which I see them appear on my screen, and you will each have 4 minutes for comments. All right, first up I have Megan McDonald.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, thanks, Jared. My name is Megan McDonald. My pronouns are she, they, meaning those are the pronouns I'd prefer you use when speaking about me, and I'm a Ward 5 resident. If that sounds familiar, it's because it is. And I'd just like to say that I don't know why the chair of the last meeting didn't stop people during their public comment and reiterate that it was for the Ward 2 appointee. That's what we mean when we say we want a more transparent and accessible council, especially in the time of the pandemic. People sign in late to this Zoom meeting. Julie Watkins was the first person to go tonight, and she was speaking about the IDOT presentation. So that, of course, led to a snowball effect to where a lot of people then in public input started to discuss other things that were not the Ward 2 appointee. I really don't know why that wasn't interrupted, because it's been done in the past. You all speak about how you want to conserve your time, that you've tried to limit public input for such matters. I really don't get it. I feel embarrassed. I feel like my time has been disrespected. But I'm sure you probably would say that you felt the same way. So anyway, I'm going to probably just reread my letter that the Ward 5 residents wrote and circulated, because there are probably people that have signed on now that weren't on earlier. So I'd like them to hear it. So as members of the Historic East Urbana Neighborhood Association, we are concerned about the increasing number of reports from residents who are worried about chemical emissions from the Emulsicoat plant, which is located in our area. The plant has been repeatedly identified as the source of these toxic fumes. Several residents called to complain about the odors, worried that at least one of the smells was escaping gas. Ameren investigated and traced the odors to Emulsicoat. People have experienced headaches, nosebleeds, and other concerning respiratory-related symptoms. Some neighbors had to keep their windows shut this summer. It's affected people's quality of life. We are asking the Urbana City Council to recognize this problem and to authorize an inspection of the plant and the property where it is located. We also request another virtual neighborhood meeting with council members, representatives of Emulsicoat, and someone from the Illinois EPA office, which I don't believe anyone is here on this call. We have seen the mayor's response to this in the Historic East Urbana Neighborhood Association Facebook page, and we are still asking that the city funds or finds a source for an independent survey of VOCs in nearby residents' homes for people who would consent to participate. This matter deserves immediate attention since it involves serious health risks for the area residents, including myself. I'm not here because of myself. Maybe I should be more self-advocacy, but I'm really here for my neighbors and their kids and their grandmas. And I don't know why this hasn't gotten attention sooner. I mean, it has, but maybe not on the city council level. I know Dennis has been paying attention to it, but this is the most attention it's gotten that I've seen all year. So of concern is the report from the mayor's office, the post on the Facebook group saying that Emulsicoat has expressed their intention to move plant operations to North Lincoln Avenue, but they say they'll take 18 months to do so, and that we're supposed to accept that this is a reasonable timeline for the size of the project, but it is neither acceptable nor reasonable to expose neighborhood residents to these fumes for such an extended length of time. It's also worthy to note that Emulsicoat, by their own website, has not had an inspection in 2 years. Thank you for your time on this. And again, please be considerate when talking about the gender inclusive language resolution. I think it'd be a really great step forward as far as accessibility, transparency, inclusivity, solidarity. And I know it's gonna take a lot of time to redo all those documents, but it's worth it, and I'd be willing to help. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Megan. All right, next I see Rick Byers.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Rick Byers with Emulsicoat. I'm the vice president there. I've been listening to some of the comments. What I'd like to state is we have been at the current location for 45 plus years, and I have been there the total 45 years. We've got 6 to 8 employees that's worked at that plant for 40 plus years with no health issues. I have had a brother work at that plant for 35 years with cystic fibrosis loading trucks and had no additional health issues. And we had numerous drivers coming through there. Yes, there is an odor complaint, but I hear about toxic fumes and chemical fumes. That's not true. And we have had numerous VOC tests at that plant. We entered that plant when it was a heavy industrial area. We all know that's not the case now. So we did take 9 to 10 years ago. We purchased property out there in the heavy industrial at Saline, and we've been moving our plant. I'd like to just state that Emulsicoat's main concern is health and safety of its employees and the neighborhood. The employees get an annual physical every year and breathing test. They wear constant air quality monitors. And as far as for the neighborhood, 20 some years ago, we have installed numerous methods of collecting those emissions, from water trapping pots to carbon beds to the state-of-art catalytic oxidizer, to caustic scrubbers, and to our current mist eliminators and neutralizers. And we are reviewing optional methods to trap these odors. They're odors is what they are. And I'd like to note that we are one of the very few asphalt terminals in the whole country collecting their own fumes and emissions. And we have numerous samples and tests from the EPA and from the Heritage Research Group, which was involved and actually headed a worldwide testing program and research on asphalt fumes. And NIOSH was involved in that. And a study conducted proved asphalt was not toxic fumes. There is an odor issue. I don't argue that fact there. And what you smelled this last week was a procedure we've done numerous years. We moved most of it out. We won't do it again, I can tell you that, cooking off some excess material. But what I'd like to state some facts. We did move 40% of our production in 2009 to Saline Court. We finally got approved and going to start construction in 2021, moving another 40% of our production out. We're going to leave about 25% production at its current facility. And all of this, the first production was over $7 million investment. This next investment is $10.8 million, and to move the entire plant would be $18 million. And one of the participants states 18 months of moving is not reasonable. 18 months would be unbelievable if we could get it done for the next step. We're in a phased process. I'd like to just reiterate one thing. We started that when it was a heavy industrial rail yard. We are moving it to a heavy industrial facility out there on Saline Court. And what you got to realize, asphalt is used in 85% of all public road systems. Every day that you drive on a road, that's an asphalt road. And we supply 85% of all the local projects and state projects in a 30-county area. And we would welcome any tour. I believe the mayor and a group that came through there, and EPA does stop in there occasionally on complaints. But we would welcome tours and inspections by whoever we want to set that group up once we get the COVID straightened out. And if anyone wants to make a tour through that plant. We're not embarrassed by what we do. We are trying. The odor is bad at times. We've never argued that fact there. We do the best we can do on that. Any amount of fumes has a slight odor to it. So I appreciate your time. And once again, I plan on talking to you later.
Thank you, Mr. Byers.
I have a question.
Yes.
Go ahead, Dennis.
I did talk to Rick Byers earlier today on the phone, inviting him to participate tonight. And Rick, one of the things that you talked to me about was the length it took for the permits to be processed for your move, and besides the investment. And could you tell me about that?
Dennis, we'll hold off on those questions. Mr. Byers, would you be able to stick around for a little bit until our discussion item comes up?
Sure.
Okay.
Do you have any idea how long? I'm traveling right now. Do you have any idea how long that'd be?
I hope not too long. So
okay.
just hang with us.
That's one of my answers. Thank you.
Hang with us as long as you can. We appreciate it.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Up next, I have Christopher Hansen.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Sure can. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the comments about my application to Ward 2. I will continue doing what I do every week, and I'll bring issues to you that it seems this council does not want to hear, but you do need to deal with them, and pushing them off further isn't going to help. So first issue I want to bring up is kind of the concerns about the one-door program that have been kind of slowly becoming louder. I'd like if the city of Urbana could explain, is there a specific resource for residents who can go look and understand more about the one-door program? I couldn't find anything on the city website, and I kind of did some Googling, and I'm somewhat familiar with it because I watch all your meetings, and so I've heard the council talk about it some, but really all I could turn up was a kind of a very simplified PowerPoint presentation by Joel Sanders, and that didn't really explain very much. And then it was mentioned a week or two ago that there were steering committee meetings. The one-door program has a steering committee apparently, and I'm wondering, is it the city council's impression that the steering committee is a public body of some sort? What type of entity is that steering committee, and are they subject to the Open Meetings Act? And are there recordings of these meetings that the public can view so we can see, what's happening with this WinGuard program? The next issue I wanted to raise, there was a CPRB meeting recently, and as I hope this council is somewhat aware, the CPRB is plagued with efforts from Urbana City staff to basically ensure that the police complaint process does not work, cannot work. Every possible effort to stuff complaints, disappear complaints, and refuse to process complaints is made by the police department and administrative staff like Carol Mitten. And at this last CPRB meeting, Carol Mitten actually brought an outside attorney, Ben Girt, to, I guess, argue the point that the CPRB can't accept complaints that may be wholly or partially based on video evidence or a video witness. And this is just another example of Urbana trying to halt every effort or go backwards in every effort to have some type of police accountability. And I wonder if that's in alignment with the values of the city of Urbana. And I know Urbana doesn't actually have any stated city values, and I've brought that up many times, and this council doesn't seem to want to comment on that. And so those are a couple newer issues, and then there's also the older issues that this council refuses to address, which are the numerous Freedom of Information Act violations committed by the city of Urbana and its legal staff. Those are now well documented with numerous letters from the Illinois Attorney General. Urbana just lost a lawsuit. A summary judgment was issued, which means that the FOIA violation was clear enough that it did not need to go to trial. So I'm wondering if, every time there's a problem, this council will entertain a presentation that attempts to show that there's not a problem. But then when we find out that there damn well is a problem, no one wants to talk about it. So I'm wondering if this is helpful going forward. Tell me something about sanctions upon board members for disclosing closed meetings. It doesn't sound legal to me. There's nothing in state statute that allows that. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about your failure to define virtual meetings in your new speaking rules. Why were we only allowed 3 minutes at the electoral board hearing recently? That's not in alignment with city code. Let's talk about Carol Mitten refusing to follow the Human Relations Commission determination that happened on November 10th. Bill Brown, you were there, you watched the meeting. The city is refusing to follow its own human rights laws. Can we talk about it, or are we just gonna keep ignoring this stuff? I'm gonna keep bringing it up every week. Maybe we could solve, one at a time. Let's do something rather than nothing. Thank you.
Ms. Manson. All right, next I've got Bo Barber.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure can, go right ahead.
All right, thank you, Jared. Hi, my name is Bo Barber. So I kind of want to talk about, so the utility shutoffs, Ameren and other big power companies through, peer pressure, not through peer pressure, that's the word, through community organizing and then pressure along with the resolution that y'all had passed, a long while back. I can't remember exactly it was that pushed those companies to start the winter moratorium and a complete moratorium for at least those power companies 2 weeks earlier than they normally would. And it's actually not a means tested one, it's a complete one, which is superb. That's going to help us during this pandemic as the vaccine is still going out, because this vaccine is not going to solve everything in one quick go. It's going to be a very contracted out thing. The other thing, though, that is still happening is Illinois American Water is still shutting people off. As for the month of November, we just got the reports that just came out the other day for the 61801 and the 61802 zip codes. There were respectively 115 and then 84 shutoffs for those zip codes respectively. So that's 199 households disconnected from by Illinois American Water. It's almost 200 people, and this is terrible. I mean, I don't know how to say that this is a good thing in any time, but especially now, I think we can all agree on that. This is especially now not the time. And what's even worse is CUPHD has been when Ameren was doing shutoffs, Ameren would send disconnect notices to them. That was by state statute. However, Illinois American Water is not held by state statute, supposedly, to do that. And so they're just, saying, well, we don't have to. We don't have to send you those notices ahead of time so you can try and get to those people. So like, I'm working with Danielle Chenoweth, like as best as I was working with Danielle Chenoweth for the Ameren shutoffs, but like, we're not getting any heads up, like about water shutoffs. We're not getting any heads up at all. So like what Danielle Chenoweth has explained is that she has seen, and I appreciate the work that she and Julie Pride have done, is that they're getting the after effects of this. They're having to reconnect people. This should not be happening. So what I please ask is that, the mayor and the council pressure Illinois American Water to do the same thing that Ameren did, because, that pressure that you put on Ameren was like very, very important. And that made a lot of change, not just, in our local community, but also led to major change across the state. So, it's not going to be a thing of like waiting for like the governor or somebody else or the county to save us. It's going to be, it's going to come down to like municipal governments to like really take a stand here. And it's all just asking is just do this, please, because this is going to kill people. Also, like I wanted to speak to the Emulsicoat guy. Well, let's not speak to him, but just speak about what he is saying. I can appreciate him coming tonight at request of Councilmember Roberts. The one thing I'd say is that, is I would genuinely caution, I'm trying to think how to say this. I would genuinely caution about trusting, corporate businesses over the interests of working class residents who you all represent. Like, people can talk about all the time, like, we've measured this ourselves. We've measured this ourselves with this thing. We've shown through our test that this is safe. And, maybe that's just me speaking me, but I'd like to see that maybe there's some other involvement in there or some other way that can be shown that this is actually the case. Because if residents are complaining about this and they think this is an issue, it's not to be something swept under the rug saying everything is fine, everything is awesome. That's got like some real Chernobyl vibes going on. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. All right, up next we have Tracy John.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, hi, I'm Tracy Chong from Urbana. I'm wondering if City Council is going to discuss the recent FOIA lawsuit that Urbana lost. Mayor Marlin rather quickly issued a press release blaming other agencies as the reason why the City of Urbana and Urbana Police Department lost the lawsuit. This lawsuit likely cost the city close to $10,000, which is like flushing taxpayers' money down the drain. Mayor Marlin's press release was written to mislead the public, especially concerning the FOIA violations that Urbana has been committing. Urbana has no one else to blame other than the person who denied the FOIA request. Urbana never had reasons. They never had the necessary reasons based on the statutory exemptions, but they still went ahead and denied the FOIA request. Urbana even tried to withhold a police record, citing the private information exemption. But the correct way to deal with these types of exemptions is just redacting as necessary. There was no excuse for fully denying a police report, which is a public record. And the people working for Urbana, city lawyer, FOIA officers should know this. The lawsuit, losing the lawsuit, the waste of a huge amount of money is Urbana's fault. The fault of whoever denied those records and whoever approved those denials. So I think it's pretty disingenuous to immediately release a press record saying it's not Urbana's fault, it's this agency, that agency's fault, and then just keep quiet and not discuss it at all, especially when it involves such a huge amount of taxpayers' money. And this is going to happen over and over again. So I think you guys really should address the issue. At the last CPRB meeting, I also thought it was quite inappropriate for Carol Mitten to bring in an outside counsel who had the same viewpoint as her, basically to tell CPRB members that their discussion about the first-hand account and the ability to initiate a complaint was essentially pointless, even though there is nothing in the ordinance that prevents it. The outside counsel was mostly referring to the Fraternal Order of Police labor contract, and how if CPRB accepted a complaint after a person witnessing the incident via video, it would be in violation of the police contract. However, this is not even relevant, as what we are discussing is just an entryway for the residents to initiate the complaint process. When it comes to the actual investigation, there are many other forms of evidence that can satisfy the FOP. Board members also brought this point up, but Carol Mitten basically told CPRB members that they are done discussing this issue. I thought that's really disrespectful to board members. During this meeting, she also cited her own interpretation of the ordinance, which was not the actual ordinance, to tell CPRB what they can or cannot do. So this is just another example of city staff trying to limit the complaint process. And what's particularly disturbing is now she's trying to use the police labor contract as an excuse to limit this complaint process. Totally conflict of interest. You guys should also look into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Chong. Next, I have Blaine Williams.
Hello. I would like to discuss a few items on the agenda tonight. The first being traffic stops. I have had the privilege of being stopped many times by local law enforcement, and it seems to me it's because I'm an African-American millennial, and I understand that there are those who will say it's not because of my race or age. However, the statistics that the city of Urbana collects suggest otherwise. But I'm not here to complain. I am here to propose solutions. And the solution that I would like to propose is that the city of Urbana police and all traffic enforcement, with the exception of DUI enforcement. I think that that would be a step in the right direction, and a lot of the discrepancies that are seen will be erased while still taking care of some of the most serious traffic offenses. Also, I would like to thank the guy from the Emulsico plant from coming and extending an open invitation for whoever would like to come tour the plant. The assessor's office will certainly take you up on that offer, and maybe we can see if there's a correlation between stinky smells and increasing industrial property values. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Next, I have a Rachel Connerly, but I'm guessing that might be Rita. Ms. Carly, I ask you to unmute. Can we unmute her ourselves?
No, we just have the ability to ask her to unmute, both verbally as you have done, and I've also hit the button asking Ms. Connerly to unmute.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Ms. Connerly, keep your hand raised. I'll come back to you, and we'll try to do so again here in a few minutes. Next, I've got Alan Axelrod.
Good evening. So the multi-code stuff is fairly new to me, but I do have experience actually working with some gas capture technology, and I don't know that it's relevant necessarily to the asphalt production method, but we can't pretend that there's nothing that can be done besides surveying around a facility for how intense any sort of emissions are and what that health risk poses. There are changes in the chemical engineering process that can be done. There are technologies that can be added to increase the community safety for this. And I hope that I'm wrong with the information that I was supplied, but, and this may sound a little NIMBY of me, but I was told that Mulsey Coates is considering a move from Ward 5 to the North Lincoln area in Ward 3. This is an issue. Let's talk about the fact that environmental racism is real. And if there are community members already complaining about nosebleeds, and the solution is, I hope, to move it really far away and not into the residentially clustered areas on North Lincoln, at the very least, that we are moving it to a historically Black area of the community, which has been so heavily gentrified and neglected that it's no longer even majority Black. It's not even majority, it's majority college students. It's majority white or plurality white. That's why there's no mortality statistics, life expectancy statistics for that area. And I think it's very reckless to consider moving a company that is causing health issues for community members into a place where its impact on people's life expectancy due to CDC procedures can be invisible. That frightens me. I hope to learn more about this, and I hope that if they are located in Ward 3, that they're located far away from any resident, because that's not okay. If they are willing to come to City Council and to say basically that the issues have some other explanation, that already indicates to me bad faith, and that we may not be able to trust them to actually change their process in a way that will be less risky to the residents of this community. We have to acknowledge that these levers are real. We have to know that in addition to the owner, we can talk to the workers about their health. What sort of protective equipment are they wearing? What is the rationale for it? What are the concentrations of the particulates that they're dealing with? And how does that diffuse out from that area? The technology that I was referencing had to do more with carbon emissions. Coal plants can capture their emissions. I know that some of that is chemically based, but this is a chemical engineering process. So let's not, we're right next to a university. Let's not just leave the process as blank if it is causing these issues. And it seems very likely that it is, because I don't know anybody who will recreationally take up an issue and say that it's causing me nosebleeds. That's a very interesting way that someone would go to hide the fact that they pick their nose too much. Like, this is a real thing that people complain about because it affects them. Again, I had migraines from my water after Illinois American Water changed something in their process. My roommate had it too at the same time. And Illinois American Water came to my home, told me that there was nothing wrong. We can't trust them. We have to be rigorous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Axelrod. Up next, I've got Eddie Pratt Jr.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Can indeed.
Okay, cool. So traffic stops, racial disparities. I mean, these things are par for the course for the gatekeepers of imperialism. You don't
Mr. Pratt, are you still there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can now. You dropped out there for a minute.
Oh, okay, okay. Appreciate you giving me that time back. Yeah. So, about the traffic stops and the racial disparities and everything like that, I think that if we're going to really talk about solutions, one of the things that has to be talked about is implicit bias. Implicit bias is the reason why Urbana has a 91% black arrest rate for an arbitrary law as jaywalking. I mean, just marinate on that a little bit. Something so arbitrary and nonviolent that serves no other purpose than to harass. Something you wouldn't have to arrest people for, more or less even really ticket anybody for. And 91% of the people arrested are black. I mean, we only make up like barely 13, 14% of the population in Urbana and across the county. I mean, we could talk about SROs in schools, but that's not particularly related, but the same picture shows. We know that nationally, black people have been, it's been proven and recorded that black people pay higher fines, get longer sentences for the same crimes as their white counterparts, especially when they have the same record. Well, I mean, we see all of this, but what plays right in the middle of that is implicit bias. So solution-wise, what I believe is that we have to more vigorously vet our applicants. Now, of course, I'm with the whole defund the police wave and all of that, but even in that doesn't fix the problem itself if we don't address implicit bias. And so we should perhaps get a more rigorous system of vetting these applicants, checking their social medias, doing a psych eval, to make sure that they don't have ties to things that are particularly problematic, be it hate groups or anything of that nature. Like if they are privy to being a part of the Back to Blue group, or Blue Lives Matter, or I mean, that's what that is. It's a reworked way of saying that. But anything that is been shown to be counterproductive for that officer's ability to enforce the law evenly across the board. And then when we do that, I believe that we'll start to see a little bit of change. There's a lot to be done as far as, making things fair. But that's where we should start. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go to Sarah Nixon next.
Hello, am I unmuted?
You are. Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, thank you. Hello, this is resident Sarah Nixon, and thank you for this opportunity to address the Urbana City Council. As the council knows, I, along with other concerned community members, am following closely the planning and development of Urbana's one-door crisis response system. At last week's city council meeting, I expressed my concerns about the one-door program not being ideologically equipped to support the queer and trans community, and I asked city council members to speak out and state their positions on the issue of one-door being run by a faith-based Christian fundamentalist group, which to any reasonable outside observer clearly presents as highly problematic. One alderman reached out to me privately. Ms. Wu expressed agreement with my concern and thanked me for, quote, bringing up the issue of CU at home and their religious affiliation. I would like to share with you Ms. Wu's comments to me. She also stated, I am always hesitant in allocating taxpayer dollars to a religious organization and have brought up these concerns previously with the consolidated social service funding expressly for the reasons that you described, proselytizing and discrimination. The one door idea has been something that has been talked about for years with little headway. I feel like we're at the point of needing to try something to figure out all of the details that have derailed the conversations in the past. With this in mind, I do feel that the best way forward is the pilot program. I will be talking with the mayor and Joel about ensuring that everyone in our community is treated fairly and that council is frequently updated. End quote. I applaud Ms. Wu for doing that, and I would like to trust that the mayor and Joel, quote unquote, will in fact ensure that everyone in our community is treated fairly and that council is frequently updated. All of the residents of Urbana likewise deserve to be treated fairly, and that means invited to the table as full participants in the ongoing conversation. I would like to see active outreach moving forward, where you invite continued community engagement in monitoring the progress of this pilot program and in calling for tangible results as it evolves. Again, the fact that an entirely unsuitable organization is directing this crisis response program in partnership with the Urbana Police Department, the very agency that the people of Urbana have asked to be removed from the process of crisis response, is greatly troubling, and in fact indicates or suggests that the pilot program appears to be starting off very much on the wrong foot. I also share Mr. Hansen's concerns iterated this evening that the steering committee seems ill-defined. Are they a public body? Are their meetings subject to the Open Meetings Act? Where can Urbana residents access the meeting agenda and minutes? According to one of the only documents produced by the steering committee that is publicly available, they and you, our city government, are asking Urbana taxpayers to shoulder an astronomical price tag on blind faith of a staggering $2 million for the first year of operation alone, and then another $2 million for year 2. The Urbana City Council recently voted on several resolutions related to funding the One Door pilot program, and specifically for funding a full-time director for One Door. So for all, with regard to all of these issues, I think it would be vitally important to engage the community of Urbana and provide us with full transparency in the process, especially the hiring process for this director. Now, during last week's public input portion of the City Council meeting, my comment focused on the One Door program meeting the needs of LGBTQ residents. I raised that issue because no one else appeared to have done so at that point. I think community advocate Megan McDonald did also address it tonight. Just checking my time. Sorry, can anyone tell me? I actually can't see the clock.
Because Jason just closed that your 4 minutes is up.
Oh, okay. I seem to have an innate ability to know when I'm done. Okay, so I will continue my comment at the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. All right, we're gonna try Rachel Connerly one more time.
¿Me oyen?
We can hear you.
Me llamo Raquel Acosta y he vivido aquí en Champaign como 40 años. Como una enfermera yo conozco a muchas latinas y me decepcionan que no hay nadie que les puedan ayudar porque las latinas no hablan el inglés y necesitan mucha ayuda. Y me decepcionan que no hay más programas que ustedes pueden ayudarle a ellas. Me pueden mucho que unas no saben los programas que hay aquí en Champaign. Yo estoy hablando.
We can't hear you. Jason, you didn't put the clock up, but I think we probably can set it about three minutes.
¿Me pueden oír?
Yeah, you may continue, Ms. Connerly.
Hay muchas latinas aquí en Champaign que no entienden el inglés. Pueden tener programas para la gente de latina. Yo viviendo aquí 40 años y hay mucha gente que no hablan el inglés muy bien. Y pueden tener a programas que ellas entienden, porque a mí me decepcionan mucho que no hay gente que les puedan ayudar a esta gente porque no hablan el inglés. Y por favor, no se olviden de nosotros, porque nosotros estamos pagando taxes aquí en Champaign. Es todo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Mrs. Connerly.
Por nada.
Last up, I believe, is Sarka Petrikova. Sorry if I said enunciated your name wrong.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay, so I would like to speak with respect to a music code. I have been in touch with Mr. Roberts and also with Mrs. or Miss Chandra Bishop. Okay, so I would like to start by saying that I do not believe that an asphalt plant belongs to the downtown of a city. I do realize that the asphalt plant has been around for a long time, but that doesn't mean that the city should let the asphalt plant expand without additionally adding restrictions that would protect the residents. I would like to just point out that the letter from a music code is laughable when the facility says that because of the facility was closing for winter season, it emitted a brief, harmless odor. Well, I would beg to differ about the brief. We, the residents of Eastern Urbana, have been smelling these fumes for me as long as the beginning of spring, so definitely not brief. For us, we live about half a mile away from the plant, and we smell the fumes quite often whenever the wind is our direction. When it says harmless odor, well, maybe it's harmless on paper, but it is not harmless to the Urbana residents who mention nosebleeds, nausea, migraines. For me, it means headaches and nausea. For other people, it's probably different. As some resident here previously stated, yep, it's not very probable that residents would just make things like this up. I would like to. I have 1 minute left, 41 seconds. I looked at the permits, and the permit from 2005, for example, to the asphalt plant mentions under the very last. Oh, did it just get closed? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm very sorry, I lost that document. Oof. Okay, I will open it again. I will probably not have enough time to read that, but here it goes. Okay, number 3. In the event that the operation of this facility results in an odor nuisance or any other nuisance due to process operating conditions, raw materials usage, or any other cause, the permittee shall take all appropriate and necessary actions, including but not limited to changes in process conditions, raw materials, or installations of emission controls in order to eliminate the nuisance. I would like to see how this is being addressed by the city of Urbana, who presumably has much more control over this issue than the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Lance Pittman.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. My name is Lance Pittman. I live in Urbana. I also want to make a quick comment on the emulsicold issue. The health conditions seem to have been raised, and that's up in the air. But I will just say that I happen to be from Mississippi, and there was I believe it was a pig farm issue, and the debate over that wasn't about health, but it was about odor. Rick from Emulsicoats did not challenge that there is an odor issue. And so I just want to say that regardless of the health considerations, which are serious, I think. I know some of the people who are affected, including the previous caller. But even if health is not a consideration, odor should be a consideration. I also want to echo Alan Axelrod's comments about being careful where the production might be moved to. Moving from Ward 2 to Ward 3 sounds a lot like moving from a richer white neighborhood to a poor black neighborhood. Although I did pull up Saline Court just now, or Saline Circuit. I'm not sure if it's circuit or court. I believe Rick said court. It does seem to be well above or well north of 74 on Lincoln. But I also don't know that area well. If there's a house within a mile of there, I would say be very careful. I'll move on. One of the main things I wanted to talk about was the decision of the Human Rights Committee, which met on November 10th, and which ruled in favor of Christopher Hansen that the city of Urbana, by requiring things like background checks on some of their job applications, are violating Urbana's own human rights ordinance. Maybe I wouldn't have even called in to talk about this, but, and by the way, the human rights ordinance says that you can't discriminate, quote, based on, quote, prior arrest or conviction record. I became aware of a letter that Carol Mitten sent to the Human Rights Commission on December 8th that essentially says that the city is basically going to ignore the Human Rights Commission decision in favor of Mr. Hansen. And wow, this is kind of incredible that the city is going to knowingly and on purpose violate its own human rights ordinance. I think it's absurd. I mean, now what? Do I file a complaint and we start this whole process over, and the Human Rights Commission has another hearing, and James Simon comes and debates me, and the Human Rights Commission makes the same decision they made the first time with Mr. Hansen? And do we just do this over and over and over again? The city seems to be playing like, oh, I'm gonna stick my fingers in my ears and yell la 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 and do whatever we want. I think the city should follow its own rules. I do want to just bring up very briefly, since it hasn't been mentioned tonight, that it's been a while now since the chief of police admitted that the Leo Lewis arrest was not according to protocol. I'm wondering whether or not the city and or the police department is going to issue Miss Lewis, an apology for the reckless and violent arrest, now that we know that they were in the wrong. Finally, I'll just say some people before me have mentioned See You at Home as being unfit for dealing with certain demographics of people, and I just want to express my concern about them being involved with the One Door program as well. I see my time's about up, so I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And last, I have Deborah Liu. Miss Liu, are you there? I don't.
She's unmuted, so perhaps her microphone's just not working.
Well, I'll give a minute for that. I got another hand that came up. Lena Walker.
Hi, yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, hi. My name is Lena Walker. I'm a resident of Urbana. And my apologies, there's a couple things I'd like to make comment on tonight. I'm working late this evening, so I have not been as attentive to council proceedings as I would like to be to make a comment, but there's a couple things that I felt like were worth saying. Kind of from listening and looking at the agenda for this evening. Number one, regarding the traffic stop zones, I had heard a comment earlier by a Mr. Pratt, and I just really wanted to echo what he had to say, especially regarding, traffic stop issues and their racial implications. I mean, especially about things like jaywalking, which is like, Christ almighty, is this 1890? Or I would certainly hope that people are not being ticketed or, God forbid, arrested for things like jaywalking. And if they are, I would say that the implications of that are pretty transparent. But the point that I really wanted to make about this was that looking at the issue on traffic stop zones and kind of trying to adjust where traffic stops are happening and recognizing that there are perhaps a disproportionate number of officers in certain parts of the city, I don't necessarily have a problem with trying to adjust that, but I wanted to express my concern from a kind of infrastructure perspective, that I hope that the council recognizes that there's also a probability that, issues with traffic might exist in certain parts of town because there's a lack of infrastructure there. And so I would hope that not only is there the issue of the number of officers being addressed, but also like a serious look at what are the disparities in infrastructure in the different parts of town. Because as a pedestrian and a cyclist, I can say for sure that some parts of Urbana are a lot better equipped for people to obey traffic laws than others. And oftentimes people are attempting to navigate through the roadways and may be unable to because of issues with lighting or deterioration in infrastructure. So I would hope that we would not only be, trying to address issues with the presence of officers, but also addressing issues of where can our infrastructure be improved. And then lastly, just regarding the Emulsicoat issue, I appreciate hearing all of the perspectives of different community members who have spoken about their concerns. I have also been quite negatively affected in my ward by the smell from the asphalt. And, if we want to look for examples of private companies telling residents that they shouldn't be concerned about disparate health effects, I mean, Fifth and Hill over in Champaign is a great example of why we should take community members' concerns seriously. And I guess that's all I have to say about that. I think that kind of speaks for itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Liu will give one more shot.
Can you hear me now?
We can indeed.
Excellent. I think Zoom has a bug where once I mute, I cannot unmute myself even if I click it. Anyways, I just have a real quick comment. Deborah Liu, Urbana resident, Ward 3 again. So when members of the council turn off their video, the members of the public can no longer see if they're even still in the meeting. So as far as the public is aware. You may not have quorum anymore, but we can't tell because we can only see the video of people who have their video turned on. Maybe just a minor point, but maybe something worth considering. I don't know if you have quorum. I don't know if this meeting is legal anymore. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address this committee of the whole meeting? All right, not seeing any hands up, so we'll continue on, and it's always input is welcome via email of the city as well. All right, so next on our agenda, I have the draft traffic stop pilot program procedural guidelines presentation from UPD. Chief Seraphin, go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you, Jared. Good evening, everyone. So about a month ago, the council was presented with a new idea about how we wanted to try and address the disparity ratio. And during that time, there were a few questions asked, and we had a few things hammered out. And I think it was you, Jared, who said, hey, are we going to get a chance to see some of these guidelines that you're going to put out to try to sort of hammer this out a little bit better? And so what you have before you is a draft of these procedure guidelines. I apologize, the title seemed to get a little longer and wonkier as we tried to work on it to make sure that it was accurate, sort of describe what we were trying to do. So with regard to the background, everyone on this council is very familiar with this particular issue that clearly people are passionate about. And so we've, as I've listened to a lot of the input tonight, people need to understand that we understand. That's why we're trying this. And that's why we're trying to come up with a way to move forward. You will see in the, it's not an overly extensive document. You will notice that in the first section, we're using the crime analyst procedure, the practice that's currently in place for us to identify the step traffic zones. Recalling that indeed that's the model we want to try to use for all of our traffic efforts, not just the special details, but for routine patrolling. I did hear, and I can appreciate some discussions regarding vulnerable road users, and I guess the idea of is this intersection safe? There's only, it might not have a large number of crashes, but if based or relative to the number of cars that go through there, maybe it is a higher percentage of those. There is a traffic commission in Public Works, and they sort of handle that more so than exactly the police do. So what we're trying to do from a policing standpoint, however, is essentially overlay that model. So if there are concerns about traffic safety and other intersections, I hear you. I don't necessarily, we can be a part of the conversation, but we don't necessarily drive intersection design. The maps, we've had couple different versions that Melissa's tried that I've looked at. So we will have those out. And that's how we will help the officers sort of understand these are the areas where the traffic crashes are occurring, and these are the areas that we're going to work your traffic enforcement. So that will be, there was a discussion, and I'll mention this tonight. I got an email late Friday from one of the local media. I don't have a problem if we show here, this is where, these are sort of the areas, and it's not, as I said, I think earlier, it's not necessarily a secret. Everyone who's sort of spoken about this is generally correct that it's certain high frequency areas, and especially at intersections. So those areas we will, and we'll get those out to the officers, and if people want to see that, that should not be any sort of an issue. As we progress through the traffic stops and this discussion, now it's sort of outside of the zones. And it was interesting tonight as I listened, we had people who talked about vulnerable road users and thought it should be more expansive. We had others who thought we should only do DUI. So that's sort of the juggling act that we're trying to do. What you will see here is, again, the dangerous, the life safety issues. this is simply of examples of few. We came back after we presented to council. We had some more discussions. So these were just some examples that we were trying to articulate down to give someone, the officers, an idea. It's not going to be all inclusive. So I just wanted to mention that with regard to that section. One of the other things, and I think this has been brought up numerous times tonight with regards to sort of trying to check how are we doing on this. If we have to make a stop outside of the zone, we have asked them to, hey, this was one of the examples where someone completely ran the red light, didn't stop at all, just blasted right through it, or was driving, pulled out of a gas station with no headlights. It's light in the gas station lot. They drove away and they're going down the street completely dark. That's the kind of thing that is a dangerous life safety issue. And so we'd have the officers they could make a stop on that. And those particular things will have a checkbox so we can track those, and so that the sergeants, the supervisors, can see what's happening with those. So that's, I guess, section 4. With regards to section 5. So there gets to be 5 and 6 sort of blend from one into the other. And I hope, again, it's not a lot of verbiage, but I hope it was helpful, and I'll be able to answer questions, that the stops, when we stop a car for a specific crime, for instance, a bank robbery, and there goes the red Camaro down the street, the officers can turn on their lights and actively stop that vehicle for a specific crime. Or perhaps it's a domestic situation. If it's a specific crime, then they know there's reasonable suspicion or the higher standard of probable cause, they can stop that car. Occasionally on the radio, the officers, as a matter of practice, will use particular radio lingo, 10 codes, and it all, if they don't call it out, if they use the wrong 10 code, 1037 versus 1038, 1037 suspicious vehicle, 1038 traffic stop, 1038. So when you use that particular code, then it goes into a particular box. And I want the officers to use the exact precise language. So if they use the wrong language, they need to go back in. We need to make sure that the tally mark is going in the right pile. So I wanted to mention that. And then with regards to pretextual stops, I know that that's sort of a buzzword, and the ears perk up when we say pretexts. One of the things that we want to do in this particular case is, and I'm not aware of there having been any limit before, and we didn't want to throw every variable in the sky up in the air to see how they settled out. So again, geography focus is the main drive of this particular program. With regard to the pretext stops, we tried to say, okay, here's what we'll do. If the underlying crime, the criminal offense, is a felony, then we'll allow them. But again, they still have to mark in a motivation sticker checkbox again as to why they might have done this. The example I tried to give was something that innocuous, like one headlight. But indeed, if that's the car that we know that 2 nights ago was in the same neighborhood that matched the make and model and color, then even though we don't necessarily know it's been 2 or 3 days, the officers, I believe at this point, that they can make that stop for the headlight to determine indeed if it is the driver, or somehow to further that investigation into that shooting. So I just wanted to kind of give a quick overview of this, just taking a few minutes tonight, and I'm willing now to listen. And if we need to clarify, if you have thoughts, I can clearly, we can take those down. Again, I want to reiterate, the issue is for us is to make sure that this is about this new change, and it's about the geography of where we're trying to direct the efforts of the officer.
Thank you, Chief. Mayor?
I just wanted to tag on to that and make it very, very clear that the goal of this new program is to completely eliminate racial disparities in traffic stops. We've been at this for over 15 years, kind of nibbling around the edges, but this represents a dramatic change in policy and practice, and our goal is to eliminate racial disparities in traffic stops.
Thank you. All right. So Mary Alice, then Sharice, then Dennis.
Chief, thank you very much. I'm excited that we are going to be launching this in January. I want to thank you and everybody who worked on this project. You actually answered some of my questions that I had. If the maps will be publicly available, it sounds like they will be. I don't know if you heard me or not.
Yeah, I'm just turning you up a little bit. There we go. We're good.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that the maps would be publicly available. You had briefly mentioned that. Where would those be placed on the website? Just you don't have to give me the exact URL.
I don't know the answer to that just yet, but yes, they'll be on the website. And I suppose we should put them under the police tab.
Okay.
And I don't do website design. There could also be, I guess, another spot where they double link things. So we'll get it up on the website.
Can you send a direct link to council once that's up?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. I was curious about the program that we have when there's an equipment violation. So I believe about a year or two ago, we started a program where we would give vouchers to people if they had a headlight that was out, and how that's going to be impacted by this.
So we still have the Fix-It ticket sort of program. It's not really a ticket. It's, as you know, a sort of a gift certificate to a local.
Voucher. It's a voucher.
Oh, it's a voucher that a local auto equipment company takes care of for us. We will continue with that particular program. So if the officer is working in a traffic zone, again, then they'll be able to make traffic stops. Oh, here comes the car without a headlight. I can stop that car, issue them the the Fix-It ticket voucher, and then they can have that and go about their way. So this would still be, it would still count as a traffic stop, but the disposition, instead of being a ticket, would be the voucher.
I kind of consider that community caretaking in some regards, because we're helping people fix equipment violations. So the other piece that I thought was interesting, one of the points from the public tonight was about the distribution of traffic accidents most likely happening where there's a lot of cars. And you had referenced the Traffic Commission. I'm wondering if that is an avenue. If I remember correctly, the Traffic Commission, somebody says, I have all these speeders down this road. And I think there was one over there by, I can't remember the name of the park. It was up on Broadway, and they did a speed determination to figure out how fast people were going up on Broadway over there by the park. So my question to you is, if the Traffic Commission has, after they do a study and they find, oh yeah, there's a lot of speeding happening in this certain area, I'm wondering if we could take this opportunity and use that information to then add that to these kind of traffic enforcement areas.
That's a policy decision. Right now, the policy decision is we're going to do it where the crashes are. One of the downsides of this particular program is that occasionally, and as Sharice and I have chatted about in the past, sometimes somebody will say, hey, I've got this traffic issue. I think there's a lot of speeding. Can you come and do this? And we say at this point, no, it's not within our traffic zone now. So what you're sort of proposing is, okay, well, let's verify that there's a problem here with either a speed trailer or some other study material. And I think if we've got an issue like that, I think it's something that we could consider. But again, I want to try to, and if Melissa was here, I'd ask to try to stay true to what we think the study is about, which is where the traffic, where the crashes are occurring, where we put the steps. That's what I want to try and continue to focus on. So we could have that discussion. And as I think I said before, I think there are times when we have other methodologies to perhaps slow traffic, whether that's just having a squad car down there. As we all know, we see a squad car and our foot comes off the gas initially. So there perhaps is some other ways to do it. Speed trailers have been somewhat effective, I think, in some of these things to sort of make the routine drivers, oh, I didn't realize I got up to 40 here pretty quick. So we think that there's some other ways we could do this. I'm open to some of those ideas, Mary Alice. I kind of want to see how this goes before we start changing other variables.
Well, and it takes time for things to move through the Traffic Commission and then to do a study and so forth. So I'd be very interested to see how this goes, and just to kind of pay attention to what's going on in the Traffic Commission if there are studies that are done that do indicate that there is an issue. And then I just wanted to clarify, because there was also a comment from the public about vulnerable people on the street. And at least according to your document that you have, that there will be enforcement anywhere in the city if somebody blows through a traffic light. I just wanted to confirm, according to the list of things here, that if somebody blows through a traffic light, regardless if they're in the traffic enforcement zone, they will be stopped.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I'll hold and let everybody else have a couple of questions. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sharice.
I'm just going to piggyback somewhat on Mary Alice's, because it is stated in number 3 that driving through a red light is definitely something that they could stop you for if you're out of the zone. My main question was progressive discipline. Could I get a definition of progressive discipline? As with all officer behavior, progressive discipline will be used to address issues of traffic stops being conducted outside traffic stop zones for situations that do not fit parameters contained with this memorandum.
So that's essentially what that is referring to, is sort of working our way up the ladder. So let's say we have somebody who, especially early on with any of our new programs, when it comes to body cams or anything that we do that's totally different than what the officers have done for a long time. We're going to say, hey, listen, we're going to do this. And the first shift comes and goes, and the sergeant looks at and says, hey, wait a minute, you realize you were outside of the zone. Usually progressive discipline, the first is some sort of counseling, coaching, verbal sort of interaction like that. A few weeks later, we have it again. Then we got to and then we'll kind of work our way up. There's notices to correct, there's letters of reprimand, we can give days off. So the idea, that the concept of progressive discipline is to work your way up sort of the ladder of discipline.
Okay. And Mary Alice was talking about a particular park right off of Broadway, which is Crystal Lake Park. Crystal Lake. Because there is an issue, and I have gotten letters from some people in that area about the fact that there is not one speed limit sign on Broadway. Now, I know that's a traffic commission thing, but if there's not a speed limit on that road, I know that driver's ed teaches you that generally then the speed limit would be like 30 miles an hour. Or something to that effect, if you know that's like the go-to speed limit for particular areas. But because also there's a park there and people are constantly crossing the street and so on and so forth, how would that particular area be policed?
So, if you're first, I honestly am not an expert in when Public Works put signs up in different places, and so maybe that's just something as simple as an educational sort of component where we are indeed putting where there's some signage put up. I don't know. I think the Traffic Commission might be involved, Sharice, if it was one of these. Well, it's 40, and we think it should go down to 30. But if it's 30 and we clearly think there's not enough signage there, perhaps there can be a recommendation made to Public Works for that. And we at the police, we can help with trying to facilitate those particular things. Again, if there is indeed some further speeding issues, again, we can ask the officers, I need you to be present in this area, because that truly does, that impacts some driver behavior. And then even so far as to Mary Alice's point with regards, okay, maybe we need to do a study and actually see what here are there other methods that we can use, whether it's even design and other ways of curb and gutter and how things are angled and built, that might be another deterrent as well.
Okay.
Thanks, Sharice. Dennis, you were next, and then Bill Brown.
Okay. One more question.
Oh, sorry, Sharice.
I'm sorry. So, one more question, and another issue that I wanted somebody had brought up also the where there's, you know, for example, there's a lot of traffic at Cunningham and University, and some of the signage has changed there. Will you or do you give people warnings when there's going to be new signage put someplace? And does that count for a traffic stop, but just not a ticket, but a warning? And also, when a person gets a fix-it ticket, does it go against their license?
So I'll start with the last one first. The fix-it ticket does not go against their license. As a matter of fact, we actually would issue it. Actually, in our records would show that Joe Smith got a warning for the headlight, and then we would present them with the ticket. So it would not be. We have to generate some document as part of the IDOT study.
Mm-hmm.
So 26 years ago when I started, you could give verbal warnings. But now there has to be some sort of document produced at every traffic ticket. So the fix-it ticket does not go against the license. With regards to new signs, public education is always easier than enforcement. Traditionally, I know when the students come back, and we usually have this rise in the campus area with regards to pedestrian traffic and whatnot. I know we have done certain things where we will put extra efforts down there with the impetus being towards just driving the message home with warnings. So the answer to your question is yes. New signs, anything new or different, if we're going to change a particular thing, we want that we always like to do education first, whether again it's with the officers or with the public.
Okay.
Dennis?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a few comments maybe. Anyway, Chief Serafin, I was on the Traffic Commission for several years, and I know that some of the things that come up to them certainly has to do with not only parking, but determining parking and placing signage up and determining what kind of sign goes to limit parking or the time of parking on a street. This is like a real common thing that comes up in the Traffic Commission. So, but also there's a lot of requests that come through for citizens who are concerned with speeding on their street. It's believed or perceived that there's speeding on the street. And so the efficiency of getting a traffic control device, I just forgot the name of it. They're called, well, anyways, the traffic counting speed limit trailer. That's what they call it.
I'm sorry. Yes, it's a speed trailer.
That's what I was looking for, a speed trailer. It really informs people about the activity on their street, whether it's well perceived and understood or else misperceived. So I would, I think I would encourage using speed trailers if there's a complaint from a citizen concerning safety on the street. Are you saying that they're not going to be distributed in the same way as before if we use this district area traffic surveillance and control as far as where the police cars are placed?
So no, just to make sure that I'm clear here. So first of all, I wish we could say we had they for speed trailers. We have one, and it currently is under the umbrella of the Public Works Division. So we work with them. They actually will get more complaints about speeding and stuff even than we do. So the speed trailer right now currently is under the purview of Public Works, and they actually go out and tow it to where it needs to be and set it up. That's separate and distinct from the zones, so we can put the trailer anywhere. As a matter of fact, that's one of my areas. I think instead of just running down, it's easy for the chief to go down to there. Hey, can we get somebody to go run some radar down there and bang out a few tickets? And then they drive right away. But if you have that trailer, and it usually is, I can't say for certain, but I don't think it's ever anywhere when it's stationed less than a week. barring an equipment breakdown, or I think it runs on solar. It stays for a week, and there is, I think, indeed, an education component to having that thing sit out there and kind of let everybody sort of sense what truly is happening.
Yeah, and I know that there's always a police representative on the traffic commission, so that you can work in conjunction with the people in public works for the placement and the decision of really almost everything that does happen relating to the traffic commission itself. Correct?
Yes, that's correct. We do have a representative on the commission. Yes.
Right. Then the last thing I was thinking about was that it's just, I think it's going to be a very interesting thing to see the pilot program work, and to take the police cars from being stationed in neighborhoods where there is an assumption that there will be a crime, which leads to, I think, racial biased results, to the streets and the corners where we know there are actual events of traffic congestion or accidents. I think that's a more neutral decision. And of course, we understand that police cars will still be responding to incidents and calls for service throughout the community, but they won't necessarily be hunkering down in a certain neighborhood waiting for something to happen. And I think that's one of the things that this pilot program really changes, that lifts it out of stagnation as far as making any kind of progress in addressing what is believed to be, a racial bias process. So thanks for doing it.
Thank you, Dennis. Bill Brown.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. I think so. This will go a long ways to kind of balance the amount of time that police officers spend in various neighborhoods where they might ordinarily give tickets, but this will kind of restrain that ticket giving just because they happen to be spending more time there. I think one thing that I didn't see on the list of things that you would enforce everywhere, no matter what, is excessive speeding in school zones when there's children present. You mentioned that if somebody has to change their direction of walking or something, if they have to change their behavior to avoid an accident, then the person gets a ticket. But I think, that might be something you'd consider. And excessive speeding really, at some level, 20 miles per hour over or something, it seems like would that be considered, I mean, it's not listed, but would that be considered a life safety issue if someone was going 55 miles per hour down University Avenue?
So yes, what's interesting is that technically when the police officers testify, that they'll actually will be in an area and you will observe traffic for a while. When you do it day after day, you can get relatively good at sort of guesstimating, if you will, the speed of a car going by. All of us do it to a certain degree. That's why people call in and want the speed trailer or extra enforcement at their particular, on their block. So yes, the officers could still go even without necessarily, and so typically I've seen this, I've observed this. Here comes a car, I believe it is traveling in excess of the posted 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. And then they usually use the radar to now confirm their observations. And that's sort of the actual order of events. And so that they actually would see that. So most officers could. I think, Bill, if we had some particular issue and the officers were just down there, even if they weren't even running radar, just sort of policing the area, and somebody goes ripping through, they would be able to handle that and address that outside of the zone. Again, these were just the first. In our working group committee, we kind of threw out some ideas, and a couple. Now, yes, we got to try to give some idea to that. And I would argue that a danger of life safety issue of going 20+ miles an hour through a school zone would be that.
Okay, yeah, I see it says examples, but they're not limited to these issues. So there may be other things that will be added to that list. And I'd kind of, to follow up on one of the points that Mary Alice made about the traffic commission, it does seem like if there's an issue brought that, and you put out the speed trailer and, you know, it does seem to be a problem. At least I don't, you know, some of these areas, if they don't have a lot of traffic, it's not really a good use of your time either to, you know, wait there for 2 hours to try to catch somebody speeding. But if it happens at certain times of day, you know, after school or after work in a certain area, it does seem like that would be someplace that you could at least address in a method lot in a purposeful way to you know, to set up a speed enforcement area for a while to try to get people used to you know, to try to get people to slow down and change their behavior in a certain area. But yeah, I think this is probably a good step in the right direction. Hope it'll be interesting to see how much difference it makes.
Thanks, Bill. Councilmember Colbert?
Yeah. I just want to remind the public that, you know, the council heard you, the city heard you, the chief heard you. You know, for now, several years, you know, people have been complaining about traffic stop disparities. And Chief Seraphin and the city have are trying to do something about it. So I think they should be applauded for that. There's not a lot of departments that come up with an innovative program like this, and I just would like the public to recognize that this is an innovative program, and hopefully it'll go a long way to ending the racial disparities in traffic stops. I can almost be assured that I probably am the only one on this call, maybe except the chief, that have read the Illinois Vehicle Code cover to cover. I was blessed to have entered the State Police Academy in September of 1987. And I think in week 2, we opened the front cover and read every word and got tested on every word. I wouldn't consider myself an expert in the vehicle code, but I probably know it better than a lot of people. There's a lot of things that the vehicle code does. It obviously regulates all things related to vehicles and trucks. But the primary reason is for traffic safety. And that's why the moving violations are there, listed in the code. That's why the equipment violations are listed in the code. That's why a lot of other things are listed in the code. You know, there's a saying in the business, directed patrols. And basically this is what this is. You find out where the fatalities are happening, find out where the personal injuries are happening, find out where the crashes are happening, send your officers there, enforce the traffic laws there. And that should drive down the injuries at those locations, because once again, one of the primary functions of the vehicle code is for traffic safety. So I think the chief should be applauded for coming up with this program, coming up with the idea of trying to drive down the injuries, trying to reduce the crashes and the injuries at these targeted locations. But what I've also heard is a lot of whataboutism. That's the problem with some of the nuances that happen in this business. What about the speeding in the street? What about the speeding in the street? You know, probably every single one of us has driven in town in the last 3, 4, 5 years, probably even today or this week, looked over in the next vehicle and saw somebody texting while driving. That is one of the most dangerous things that anybody can do, because they don't have their eyes on the road. That's not just a danger to the other vehicle traffic, but it's a danger to pedestrians, bicyclists, property. I've been hit 6 times in my career. 6. 2 of them almost killed me. That was in the early 90s. It has to be terrifying to be a police officer on the road, knowing that somebody is looking at their phone, updating their social status when they should be looking at the road. So the challenge is we've got human police officers trying to do the best they can, trying to ensure the safety of the community, the safety of the driving community, and they're going to be called to task if they look over and they see that person texting while driving. In my world, as a law enforcement professional, that should elicit a traffic stop. But admittedly, in this program, maybe it doesn't. That officer is going to have to articulate why that traffic stop comes into that realm that is life safety. So I think we need to be very, very cautious about being overly critical to these human police officers who are doing their best to ensure public safety in the community, while at the same time doing their best to ensure a successful pilot program in these high crash, high injury locations. So once again, Chief, congratulations. I think this is an excellent start, and I can't wait to see if the directed patrols will drive down the injuries and the traffic crashes at these targeted locations.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Disparity.
Anyone else? Mr. Colbert, would you take the chair so I could ask some questions?
I sure will, and I recognize Councilman Jared Miller.
Thank you. So, Chief, one quick question and then one more in-depth question. Because it's not, I know it's a draft document, we've obviously raised some things that will probably change this document even between now and, whatever the next step is. But the fix-it ticket thing, because it's doesn't meet the dangerous life safety issue parameter, are we still going to make mention of that in this? Because, education, for people to understand that you're not going to get stopped for that because we're still doing that program. And this, to me, kind of reads like, if I got pulled over for that, it'd be, and I knew was familiar with this, that I would be like, well, what the hell? It says, it's not dangerous.
Yeah, that's, and that had not come up in our discussion. That's one of my notes. As far as I'm concerned, yes, it would be though, if we're in the traffic stop zones and here comes somebody with whatever the violation might be that we can give a fix-it ticket for, the headlight, taillight, they could make that stop and then issue a fix-it ticket as opposed to an equipment violation.
Okay. Anyway, just something to consider about incorporating language about that, or so people understand that is still a thing that's going on, and it is sort of a community service, and trying to help people get those things fixed, and offering the voucher is a great thing, and I still fully support that program, and I look forward to funding it again in the future. So the more in-depth question is two parts. What's next after this meeting? And the other part is besides what's immediately next, how do we measure success of the pilot program? That's the one thing I didn't see in here, other than that it's broadly stated that we're hoping that it's going to reduce racial disparities in traffic enforcement interactions within our community, but it doesn't really elicit exactly how it is that we're planning on measuring that. So I think that that's one thing that's been left out of this document is, how are we going to show success of that? So that was two-part, what's next, and how are we going to show the success or lack thereof of the program?
Sure. What's next? That's the easy one. That's taking this pieces down in the notes and the edits and the ideas, and expanding and cleaning this particular document up and get it out so that come January 1st, Melissa likes when I change procedures on January 1st. It makes her data comparison much easier year to year. So that's what's going to be next. Remember, this is in sort of conjunction with the council memo from approximately 1 month ago, which sort of laid out the particular concepts here. So truly, that's going to be the next step, Jared. So I'm glad that everybody was able to get us some feedback tonight. With regards to measuring success, I guess I see two particular things, and sort of what Bill just talked about a little bit here. I would expect two things to happen, or we're hoping to see. We're going to measure the disparity ratio, and then traffic crash, those numbers, whether it's, I don't remember the exact formula with regards to the traffic crashes numbers, and then there's an influence of personal injury accidents on that Melissa uses to sort of identify these areas. And what our hope would be that the numbers of crashes go down and the disparity ratio goes down. Those are, I think, to me, the two big things for the measures of success with regards to this. And whether that actually belongs in the procedure guidelines, which are more, this was more designed to sort of help the officers understand exactly, okay, nice concept paper, Seraphin, but how do I actually make this work? That's what the procedure guidelines were designed to do. So the measure of success would be the disparity ratio and the traffic go down, and the traffic crash numbers go down. I'll follow up real fast that we are, especially 6-8 weeks ago, with regards to as the pandemic ramped back up again and the numbers started to climb, we again said to officers, we shut down traffic stops again. So only in the most egregious things do anybody doing anything. We don't need more extra contact face-to-face with other humans. So so I'm going to kind of, that's the one piece of this that I don't necessarily get to control very well, which is as this pandemic, and especially as it moves into vaccines, warmer weather, springtime, and then we'll get I think, a much better handle on how effective this is.
Okay. So follow up to the response, and perhaps we need to have a quick discussion with Melissa again, maybe around the time that this goes live after the first of the year, about measuring statistics with this, because I believe that maybe Mary Alice or Bill can correct me if I'm wrong, but if the way that we're going to calculate disparity ratio using this data, I don't think is going to be a one-to-one comparison to the way that we were doing it beforehand. And I'm not sure about that. Perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps we don't know enough to know that, but it would be good to know before 3 months from now when we get a quarterly report, or 6 months from now, however long it is until we see another statistical report, that we find out then, oh, well, it was this prior to the program, and now we think it's this through the program, but we can't really compare these two numbers exactly because of X, Y, and Z being different in these statistics. And it would be good, I'm not saying that we have to, it would just be good to know if they're going to be measurably recognizable against one another, or to be pitable against one another, because this is a new program, and I don't know. Do you get what I'm getting at? I would like to hear from Melissa about this. And one further point of that is that we're also offering what sounds to me like a lot of new opportunities to track how police are doing interaction. For example, the whole Beyond Zone thing. We can look at how many stops are being held in Beyond Zone versus in Zone. And I don't know how many of these things that just a couple of ideas I have after reading this that I wanted to share, or you guys are already planning on tracking, but that's one. But also, for example, the mentioned miscoding and a corrected coding. That would also be, I think, interesting statistic to watch to see, if it's a problem of officers understanding which call, and if it's being adopted, that would be another one. Same thing with suspicious vehicles versus these. That's another particular kind that we can get. And then pretextual, watching how those change versus what we were having before as well. Any of those points, and probably there's more that Mary Alice or Bill could think of that would be useful, including the life safety issues versus non-life safety issues. I don't know. There's a lot of data, a lot of new data that I feel like can get captured in here that would be useful. And I would like to at least hear from Melissa about her plans for tracking this and showing us in our statistical report when we get it later on down the line what the results were in the program.
Okay, I don't know that we'll get to hear from Melissa before January 1st. I'm fine with that. Melissa loves to talk about these kinds of things. We will do I guess I'll just come back to, and there's some other things, Jared. The disparity ratio is the number one thing. We will be able to, the stuff that's all been mentioned in the guidelines, we have methodologies that we have built in to try to collect this data. The amount of stuff that we collect is pretty extensive thus far. With regards to trying to figure out if somebody's made a clerical error and wants to flip from, oh no, that was a suspicious vehicle, I inadvertently said the wrong thing. I don't know that we'll be able to try to capture that kind of thing. And matter of fact, I don't want the officers to feel that we're staring over their shoulder when it comes to the accuracy of it. Get me the most accurate thing. If you said the wrong thing, that's fine. Get me the accurate data. And so I know there's a lot of things that we can collect. I'm hoping that we can get most of these. With regards to Melissa, it obviously won't be for a few weeks.
And I understand that. That's why I said sometime after the new year, because we're not going to have collected meaningful data in the first 2 weeks of the pilot program anyway. So
no, and to piggyback on that exact idea, I do think when we have the especially for this pandemic time, I mean the stops, the numbers are way down. It's, as Melissa said, it's much harder to try to make reasonable inferences from the data as the numbers have sort of, the bottom has fallen out.
Okay, that concludes my questions.
Then I will transfer the chair back to Councilman Miller.
Thank you, Councilman Colebrook. All right, Sharice.
Just one more question, Brian. Regarding the progressive discipline thing, is there a rubric that you'll have in place regarding, for example, if there are one or two officers that seem to have many more traffic stops than others, and and how you discuss that, or if it becomes a problem? Is there something in place? Because we hear all the time about this officer was disciplined 15 times and nobody did anything, So I'd just like to know that there's some kind of rubric in place to the point where when would they get desk duty, or when would they get a rip for not doing, maybe going overboard? When would they have to go to talk to a counselor or be dismissed?
So no, there is no rubric at this point. Okay, so generally what I'll say is the rubric is the progressive discipline is the general model. But I don't have, on your first infraction, you get this. If you commit a second infraction within 60 days or less, then it's that. No, that does not exist. And there's only a couple of, I think maybe traffic crash involvement of the officers is one of the few where we have an actual sort of a real hard line sort of rubric or matrix. Most of the time when we try to deal with officers, that we try to use this program. We're going to start at the lowest level, and then we're going to, and then we'll work up. So I do not have a rubric on that.
So will you be developing one, or will one be developed, or are you? At
this point, I'm not planning on developing that. I don't necessarily think that's going to be an issue. And with regards to, I mean, and so I guess, well, they were a block outside and I couldn't get out of the gas station. I suppose there's, like anything, when we have an issue, we want to try to investigate it, and then talk to the officers and then understand what's happening. And I think we've said this, and I know that it's been said in the working group meetings. We don't know that we're going to get this right immediately from the beginning. So we want all the officers to understand that. We might have to tweak it, change it. Hey, we thought this was going to work, but bullet point number 4 was an absolute mess. So at this point, I don't I don't think we'll need a very specific rubric with regards to affecting the officer behavior in this program.
Okay, I'm going to take your word for that right now, but I'm just saying, because I have that idea, that condom rule. I'd rather, have one and not need it than to need it and not have it. So if in fact you need something to that, I'm just saying something to that effect.
Sure, and for whatever it's worth, so for instance, I mean, when it comes to progressive discipline, sometimes we might have to go across different issues. This guy's, he's been late to court 3 different times. He got this. Now we talked to him about the stops. Now he's got a second stop outside the zone. We're going to do this level instead of maybe only going to level 2. So usually there's a lot of variables that get into sort of some of the affecting employee behavior sort of arenas.
All right. I just thought I'd ask the question. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharice.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're approaching 9:40. We've got 1 ordinance and 3 more discussion items to go, so we probably gotta keep going here, folks. Does anyone have any last comments?
I just wanted to say thanks for coming up with trying to find a solution to bringing those disparities down, and I hope it works.
Me too.
Thank you, Chief. All right, next up on our agenda is resolution number 2020-12-069, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a new cable franchise agreement with Comcast of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, LLC. Carol, I believe you want to say something to this?
Well, you skipped over staff report, and I just had.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that okay if I just?
Go ahead.
All right. I wanted to introduce you all to Dave Westner, who is your legal counsel for this evening. And with the retirement of Kurt Borman, we decided we needed to have some supplemental legal services, and we have engaged the firm of Evans, Froelich, Beth, and Chamley, and Dave is with that firm, and he has a really unique background that suits us very well, which is that he was the city attorney for the city of Danville for about 20 years, and he's providing support for you tonight. And Jim Simon is taking a very well-deserved vacation. So just wanted to let you know who Dave is.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
Mayor?
I had a little bit to add to the staff report. 2 things. First, update on COVID-19 activity. About 500 doses of the vaccine were administered in the community last week. Public Health expects thousands more to arrive this week, both from Pfizer and Moderna, and they'll be following the 1A group, the healthcare workers and that sort of thing first. At the same time, the vaccinations are starting to be done. The University of Illinois is coming very close to rolling out a strategic application of the saliva test in the community. It won't be available to the general public in terms of a walk-in type situation because of the need for reporting results and being in a network, but they're going to be looking at essential workers, schools, possibly larger businesses, and then vulnerable communities. So we're very close to comprehensive saliva, or very close to having saliva-based testing out in the community. And, and that is going to have to continue, comprehensive testing, vaccination, and then the basic measures of masking and distancing will need to continue through most of the next year. So while people are looking at vaccines as being, that is the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're still in the tunnel, but we're getting through it. But we are going to have testing with us for really the next year, probably. So that's just one thing that people need to keep in mind, and we really need everyone's help in encouraging people when they have an opportunity to get the vaccine to take it. There is distrust, and there's still some, misinformation floating around out there. And if anyone thinks this isn't I don't think anyone here thinks it's not something to be taken care of. If Champaign County were its own region, we would be completely open. Our positivity rate is very, very low, but we're not. We're part of Region 6. And tragically today, we had a 21-year-old died from COVID cardiac arrest. So, you know, every age group is vulnerable, and we're still losing people. The other item I wanted to touch on, and that is One Door. You may remember we had planned, and I'd hoped to bring an update on the One Door program tonight for you. This obviously isn't happening. Last week, several things kind of came up at the last minute unexpectedly that we have to step back and deal with. But I wanted to just emphasize to you and to the public that I believe this approach has the most promise for the long-term benefit for the community. A lot of police departments or communities are hiring a social worker to join the police department, and that's a good start. But the approach we are trying to take here is much more comprehensive and complex. And that means it's going to take longer to implement than we thought. Our partners in this were, Rosecrans, who contract with the Mental Health Board, contracts with Rosecrans they're the major behavioral mental health services provider in the county, along with substance abuse, Carle Hospital, and See You at Home. And all three were very important components of this plan. There's concern about See You at Home. See You at Home was the place. We needed a place for people to go 3:30 in the morning that was an alternative to the emergency room or to jail. And so as a partner, they will accept everybody, and I know there's not going to be a religious filter applied to anyone in crisis who comes there, whether or not they come via the police or whether the community they arrive there on their own or with a family member. So we are working, we have things to work through. Last week, the council signaled your commitment to trying this approach through allocating some of the police salary line to pay for a director for this program. The money is not transferred. It won't be transferred to Rosecrans, who is going to hire the person until we're certain of all the details of the program. So we're not going to spend taxpayer dollars unless we're fairly confident that it's going to be well spent. And in the meantime, we have to work through a number of details. But I think I strongly support this concept, and we will work very hard to get it launched. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other staff reports? All right, let's go on to the resolution. I'll read it one more time. Resolution number 2020-12-069R, resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a new cable franchise agreement with Comcast of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. And this is coming from Sanford and Jason.
Yeah, good evening, Council, and nice to meet you virtually, Eric, and congratulations on your appointment. I'm UPTV Station Manager Jason Liggett, IT Director Sanford Hess, and Comcast Art Zemberski are also in attendance tonight should any questions come up for either of them. As Jared alluded to, I'm here presenting a renewal of the city's cable franchise agreement with Comcast. Our current agreement expires next month. For those not familiar with the cable franchise agreement, this document generally grants cable companies the use of right-of-way and allows the cities the operation of PEG channels, public education and government channels. And of course, in this community, that means CGTV operated by the city of Champaign, UPTV operated by the city of Urbana, UI7 operated by the University of Illinois, and PCTV operated by Parkland College. The city also is able to collect a franchise fee and a PEG fee through the cable franchise agreement. Urbana also has a cable franchise agreement with i3 Broadband, and that is from 2014 is when we came to that agreement. It's also a 10-year agreement, so it'll be up in 2024. AT&T is the other cable television provider in town, and they have a state-issued franchise. For the past 2 years, we've been in negotiations with Comcast. One of our goals when we first started those negotiations in that process was to better align the i3 broadband agreement with Comcast. Although they were already very similar, one thing that you'll see is in Section 3, there's a lot more detailed language in the proposed agreement with Comcast than what's in the current agreement with Comcast. And this concerns right-of-way and just both parties, how they're able to use right-of-way, and it's just a better understanding of what's expected, both from the city and from Comcast in this part. Another key component of this agreement is the retention of Section 10.1.1, which is the 5th PEG channel. The community and the city worked very hard last franchise agreement renewal process that was finalized in 2011 to get this into the agreement. And last year, early 2019, when I was going around to community members and organizations talking about UPTV and the potential of a separate public access channel, which has always been the intention of the 5th channel, some of those organizations weren't ready to launch into operating that at that time, but they were very concerned that they would continue to have that option in the future. And this agreement that I'm bringing forward tonight does have that option in the agreement. So if the cities of Urbana and Champaign ever should desire, they can launch a 5th PEG channel to be used for public access. There's also a change in the PEG capital fee rate. That's falling from 2% to 0.75%. This currently estimates around $41,000 annually for that'll be collected and spent on PEG capital purchases. We feel this is an appropriate amount for the equipment that we'll need here at UPTV and projections going into the future, any future equipment needs that we might have. The section also has a layer of transparency added between the city, Comcast, and the public. The city will now provide Comcast a detailed report of our spending of the PEG fee. We were actually already calculating this for internal staff purposes, so it doesn't necessarily bring any more burden on staff, but it's just the way that the public can see how we're spending that fee that we're collecting, as well as Comcast understanding what we're purchasing through that fee. Staff recommends approval of Resolution 2020-12-069R, which will authorize the mayor to execute the agreement, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Jason, Bill Brown, and then Mary Alice?
Yeah, for not this one, neither of these, this one nor the i3 broadband franchise agreement had anything to do with broadband, right? It's just for cable TV.
Correct. Now, obviously, that grants them the right-of-way use that they also use to provide those services, but it's not specifically broadband. It's more specifically cable television services.
And there's no mention of broadband service in either franchise agreement. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Do we have any control over franchising broadband service?
Yeah, we do. So there's other companies in town, such as Volo Broadband, that they don't necessarily have a franchise with the city, but they go to Public Works and they have to have a right-of-way. They have to apply for a right-of-way permit to be able to use that right-of-way and put any equipment or cable in that right-of-way. And there's a few other companies in town. I just mentioned Volo off the top of my head.
But those are right-of-way use agreements, not franchise agreements.
That's correct.
Okay. And for the PEG capital fee, do we also receive some kind of equipment allowance through the i3 broadband franchise agreement?
Yeah, we receive that through the i3 broadband agreement and also the state franchise with AT&T. The bulk of the money, just because the bulk of customers in Urbana are Comcast subscribers, comes from Comcast.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all my questions for now. So, I mean, really, we can't expect anything in here to, like, if we were interested in, hooking up more people to broadband, this wouldn't be the agreement to use.
No, this is more, kind of as you hinted, this is more just giving them the use of right-of-way to provide cable services.
I know Comcast does have a program that they or they used to, I think they still do, where they offer pretty low cost broadband service for kids who qualify for the free and reduced lunches at school. So I assume they're going to keep doing that, and that doesn't have any, this agreement doesn't have any impact on broadband.
I wouldn't think so. I'll let Art chime in if he wants to. I know they also did some promotions as we went into the pandemic, just because there was a higher need for internet in our community, and they had some stuff around that too. But Art, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, for sure. Councilman Brown, I appreciate the question. And Comcast has had a program called Internet Essentials now for 11 years, and that program is geared towards low and income families, or it started out that way, but now it's all lower income families, not just ones that are on the free and reduced lunch program. So once the pandemic hit also, we announced that not only is it $9.95, and that's what it is every month, is the first 2 months are free. We also started a sponsored service program, so we're working directly with actually the Urbana School District has 3 different sponsored service programs where we're connecting Urbana students so they can get online and be part of that program. So not only have we done that, we've opened up all of our Wi-Fi hotspots throughout the nation, and we just recently announced that we will continue to do that through June 30th, 2021. So making sure everyone's connected, especially at a time when students are at home and families are at home, is important to us. We monitor our network, and we put a lot of money into making sure our network is running in a tip-top shape to make sure that those who are connected are being able to do their Zoom calls and do their classes and all those types of things. So we're very committed to that.
Great, thanks. I appreciate that update. I did think of one other question, and that that was really important to understand, that aspect of it as far as the low-cost broadband. I know I've pushed that program for several people, and I hope they've signed up because I think it's a great program. But my other question I thought of is last time we renewed, which was probably 10 years ago. There was not I don't think there was a charge for broadcast TV. Now there's a separate charge on your bill for the broadcast TV. And so I happen to have the lowest tier. So I have the low tier and then the broadcast added on to that. And then, just tax and stuff, I think, after that. But the wording doesn't seem to have changed to reflect anything about the broadcast. So is the basic tier still include the broadcast officially, and it's a separate fee on your bill, but it's not really, you can't separate it from the tier?
Yeah, so the broadcast fee really reflects our programming costs. So those costs that are associated, and those are going up exponentially every year. They're our highest cost, our highest expense that we have. As you've seen, other providers are raising their costs as well. But we take a look at those costs, and they don't cover even the full amount of the broadcast. But what we try to do is be more transparent in what costs are going to. So those costs are paying for programming, while some of the other costs are not only programming, but infrastructure and those types of things.
So the basic tier, though, it still includes broadcast? I mean,
it does.
You can't separate those two, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Mary Alice?
I'm wondering, I don't know if this is a question for Jason or Art, but you had mentioned that Section 3 had changed a bit, and I noticed that if the city requires some of the utilities to be moved underground, that the city reimburses Comcast for the cost. Is my reading of that correct?
So Jason, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead, Art.
So our position is if there is money available for all users of the right-of-way, that we would be paid also. So basically, if power company has to move, the telephone company has to move, we have to move, and there are costs that are built into those relocation costs, then we would be paid. But if nobody's getting paid, or if there's no relocation cost, then we wouldn't expect to be paid.
And does anybody know how frequently that has happened in the past under the current contract?
I don't know, and I know we had conversations with Public Works was obviously involved in writing, particularly that section, and we had conversations about how often that happens. But I know there's language saying, oh, if we're moving stuff underground from above ground, and we just don't do that a lot in this community. We still are have a lot of stuff above ground. You can go, take a drive down Cunningham Avenue, and there's, not just power cables everywhere, but cables of every sort of utility going everywhere. So I can't tell you an exact number, but I know it doesn't happen all that often.
So
I don't know.
Would it be fair to say that it's happened less than 10 times over the past 10 years? I'm just looking for round numbers. I'm not looking for exact numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Carol might have an answer for you.
Yeah, I haven't been here for the past 10 years, but it's very infrequent. Some communities have a very proactive effort to put utilities underground in particular. And this actually, the agreement initially only spoke to the relocation of facilities from above ground to underground. And then we wanted to make sure that we also had the ability to move the facility if necessary, if it was already underground, to another underground location, because after all, it's a license to use our right of way. But those are typically communities where there's a lot of development. So, I mean, if we're blessed with a lot of new development and we need to relocate utilities, then this will become more relevant. But I don't think it's going to be a big thing going over, certainly over the next 10 years.
Okay, all right. And then my second question had to do with the payment service obligations. So the requirement is that, whoops, sorry, wrong page, the franchise fee. There we go. So section 5 talks about the franchise fees. So the city receives a franchise fee of 5% of the annual gross revenue within the city of Urbana geography. And for people who are subscribing to Comcast, it sounds to me like that means that is worked into the bill. It's not a separate line item on their bill. Is that correct?
I think
no, it is a separate line item in the bill. It specifically says franchise fee.
Okay, so people will see how much money is going to the city for that franchise fee.
Yeah,
that's correct.
And that
cable TV services.
Yeah. And that franchise fee is remaining the same. It's been 5% over the last 2 franchises.
And roughly speaking, how much is that per year?
I think that 5%, it comes in at around 400,000 annually, give or take 50,000. I'm fairly certain, and that goes into the city's general fund.
Okay, all right, thank you. Those are my.
All right, thanks, Mary Alice. Any other questions? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion. Go ahead, and Councilmember Colbert.
Yeah, I would offer a motion for resolution number 2020-12069R, or a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a new cable franchise agreement with Comcast of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, LLC. I would have a motion for approval.
I'll second that.
And second from Mary Alice.
Send to council for approval.
Yes, send to council for approval.
All right. Any discussion amongst council members? All right. Sharice?
I don't know. I guess I'd kind of like to hear from Sanford as far as what his what his opinions are regarding this particular resolution.
My opinion, am I coming through okay?
Yeah.
My opinion is that Jason did a fabulous job, and Jason mentioned that this effort's been going on for 2 years, but this is truly a long-term relationship with Comcast, and I just really want to throw a lot of praise Jason's way. I mean, not only does he do a fabulous job managing UPTV and managing all these meetings, but these contracts are very complicated, and this franchise agreement went all over the place in terms of involving public works and in technical side and all the administrative numbers. And Jason really did a great job bringing all the pieces together. It truly has been a huge effort over the past 2 years, and I just really want to say thank you to Jason for doing what he's done.
Cool. Any other comments by council? Dennis?
Yeah, I'm just really glad that we're retaining the PEG channels and the option for the fifth one. It's very important to the community, so thanks a lot. We haven't lost that.
Okay. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Sachs?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes. All right, that motion passes with the recommendation for approval going to the full city council.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work. All right, so we have 3 discussion items remaining. The first is community health concerns regarding emissions at the Emulsicote plant, and that's coming to us from Councilmember Roberts. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yes. So actually, we've had a lot of discussion somewhat already this evening and a presentation somewhat of the state of the situation, also from Rick Byers, who's the plant manager at Emulsicote. This issue has been an important topic within the Huna neighborhood, and I understand also in Wuna. Those individuals who live within a reasonable range of the plant have known of its existence for a long time. There have been a series of instances where I've received calls from the community wondering about a smell or an odor that was in the air and where did it come from. Most recently, I myself, when walking in my neighborhood about 2 Sundays ago, came to a corner. It was at Weber Street and High, and we thought that there must be a gas leak. We actually went home and called Ameren, and they came out to check it, and they didn't find any natural gas problem at any of the residences in that area, but they traced the smell to the Emulsicote plant. And it didn't surprise me all that much because just 2 months before in October, we did have a meeting of a resident at a resident's home on Weber Street who had wanted to talk to me about emissions and problems that he felt were created by the emissions. And his house is only probably about 200 feet from the back of the plant. And it's been an ongoing issue in our community. Unlike what we can do for a nuisances relating to noise, which I've dealt with over the years in Ward 5, related to trains unloading plastic pellets at the DART Container Company to the east of our city. The issues about odor that are sort of periodically plaguing the community relating to procedures at the Emulsicote plant have not really been satisfactorily addressed. And it was interesting to hear from the plant manager that over the years they've actually installed a series of procedures, scrubbers, I don't know, water filtration systems, electronic devices that they're attempting to reduce and eliminate particulate matter that's being expelled at the plant during the process of melting and heating the asphalt when they make the mixes and slurries for street pavement use. But as he said, you know, he feels that it's safe as far as particulate matter and conditions of breathing and lung issues, but still we do have the odor. And so it's my interest to acknowledge that certainly over 57 postings to the HUNA Facebook page that have occurred over the last couple of days. It's probably even more. I haven't checked in the last 2 days, actually. And to acknowledge the fact that it still remains to be a problem in the community. So I was hoping that maybe the city's sustainability and resilience director or officer might have some thoughts about what can be done as far as the city's oversight of the plant. Because currently it looks like they're operating under a permit that's been provided by the Illinois EPA, and they've come out and had tests done at various times when citizens have complained there. But you know, it takes maybe a day for them to come out. They will come out in the middle of the night if the complaint has to do with nighttime emissions. But when they've come out, either the wind has changed or the procedure has ended, or even as we know currently that they were doing some burn off of some residue slurry that had been in one of the tanks, and it produced the odor that we're currently addressing this week. So the plant manager said that he'll never do that again, but it was one of the procedures, a way that they do to clean their tanks when they shut the plant down for like this long period in the winter between the holidays and sometime in March or April when they begin to have orders again for their materials. So, so I don't know. I mean, we know that there's a problem. It has to do with the smell, basically, that really has upset people. But I know that I live a couple of blocks from the plant, and we've had we've noticed the odor coming into our house if the windows are open during the summer, and I know it's not a pleasant experience. So whether it's possible to have an independent a test of the air quality near the plant or near the stacks where this is being emitted or not would be of use to find out, so that we have, I mean, we already have tests, and we'll be able to access EPA evaluations, not only taken during the permits, but at other times. And I haven't seen those evaluations myself, but Mr. Byers said that he would make them available to us if we requested them, and I think it might be appropriate to receive those from him. So he seems to be trying to work with us as well as he can. And the big really news that I understand is that the plant has been trying to move its operation to the far north edges of the city in the industrial area along the railroad track in Saline Court, which is an ideal place for this process to be situated. And it's a shame that back in the 70s, the emulsification coat plant was established, you know, so close to the middle of the downtown. But at that time, people didn't have the same kinds of awareness and concerns that we do today about the environment and its effect on people's health. So that said, we've had a lot of public input tonight about it. And if Rick Byers is still online, if he wants to comment further about cooperating with the city to probably reduce the odors in particular, perhaps there's some technology.
Dennis, he's not still in attendance.
I already promoted him to a panelist, so he should be on a panelist. You probably
wrong thing. All right, I guess he is here.
So I don't know. This might be an opportunity for him to speak if he would like to. He's been waiting online for a couple hours now.
Rick, if you have any comments before council continues discussion, you should be able to unmute. I don't know if he's still listening to us or not.
Yeah, I know. He said he would put it on mute at his house. It turns out that tonight it's his son's birthday party. So I mean, we're kind of like a conflict of interest here as far as a father's attention. So I really did appreciate him responding earlier on, and I thought that maybe that would be enough to give some background to this discussion.
Okay. Well, if he pops in, we'll get his comments. Any other discussion from council members on this issue or offers for direction? Sharice, I saw your hand first, and then Mary Alice and the mayor.
I just, and I don't know if Mr. Byers is still listening, but I would like to know, I know that you have an ordinance regarding their moving from their present location over into my ward, which it happens to be quite a few miles away from like residents as far as I can see on the map. The question that I guess I have is regarding the fumes and so on and so forth, is if in this new location, if they have some new some type of new equipment that will actually help remove that smell. Living in the 3rd Ward since I was a child, we have always caught the manure from U of I, the smell coming from Kraft. And this is not necessary. I'm not looking forward to having any oh dears come through Ward 3. If he has, I'd like just to know if there's some different equipment, different environmental something put in place.
I think Rick has come back to the attendee.
Mr. Byers.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, we can.
I mean, you're cutting in and out completely. You were fine all night until I got ready to talk here, and you're cutting in and out. I don't know why.
Okay.
Fine.
Repeat your question, Sharice.
I was just asking. I was just wondering if going to your new location, which is in my ward, I would like to know if you've added any additional environmental equipment that could possibly keep a particular smell, that smell that is coming from Dennis's ward, tapped down or eliminated.
Once again, I'm sorry. I mean, I hear part of the question, but if you can hear me, we've been operating that plant. We've been operating that plant up there now for 10 years. Has there been any complaints up there?
None that I have heard, but I haven't been here
hear me?
for years either. So
we can hear you, Rick.
But since I've been here, I have not heard. I've not heard any. No.
No, but that plant's been operating now for 10 years. It's probably putting in as much production through that as we do at the university facility. That is a heavy industrial. You issued us permits already. We're planning on starting construction on the next major phase of moving part of the plant up there already. It's been approved, so, the permitting, I believe, completely.
Okay. Yeah. What is the percentage of
Are you having any problems hearing me?
That is? No, I can hear you fine. You can't hear me at all? Hello?
I only hear part of your conversations. I mean, for some reason, it's kicking in and out constantly now.
Okay.
I heard everything fine all night.
Thanks for the comment, Rick. Since he's having a hard time hearing us, you guys, we still have 2 more discussion items to go, and it's about.
Let me move locations. I'll see if that works. But
okay. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me? I heard.
I can hear you.
I keep moving locations here, trying to get a constant question, but that facility up there sits next to a garbage transfer station, a shingle plant, 2 recycling plants, and a hot mix plant, a concrete plant, and a foundry.
Yeah, that's
and I don't believe, though, that we've had any odor issues up at that plant. We are looking, even for a university site, we're trying to still see, every time we hear new technology, we take a look at it. Our plan is to take, and if we find the technology that works, and someone was talking about gas studies and that, we have a lot of studies ourselves. And I'd say, and somebody else says they don't trust corporate America. I don't appreciate those comments, but this isn't a corporate deal. This was a national from NIOSHA. I mean, this was a worldwide study on asphalt fumes. And once again, I go back to the same thing I've told everybody. I can't say we don't smell. We try to capture as much as we possibly can. We've tried all the technology I told you about before. We're knocking all the particulates out in that mist odor eliminator. That's what they were developed for, the heavy oils. The burn off the other day was coming out of a tank that did not have the emission controls because it's an emulsion plant, our emulsion tank that is made for emulsions. What we've done for 40 years is cook it off in there year without major issues. I apologize for that, but going forward, we can take and do it at the other plant. We done it 2 weeks before that at the other plant and no issues whatsoever. But we tried tanks up out there. So we did not.
Yes, now you're starting to cut out. Your position perhaps is not the perfect.
Whoops.
Go ahead and keep us going forward. Mary Alice, you had a comment, and then we'll go to the mayor.
Yeah, I really had two items. The first one, of course, is the smell, which we've talked a lot about, and they've offered that this is something that they're aware of. The second piece is the toxicity. So I feel like in terms of order of what's most important to think about is the toxicity, to make sure that the air quality within our community is not impacting people's health. So I would be interested to have a conversation with this individual about the EPA reports. You know, when was the last time they had one? Was it the Illinois or was it the U.S. EPA that did it? So I can certainly reach out to him, but I think that the toxicity is something that hopefully we can answer. And if it's not something that we can't answer, we probably need to consider doing something further. The second piece is the smell, and I certainly sympathize. I'm fortunate that the smell doesn't reach me all the way in the area that I'm in. I am very sensitive to smells myself in terms of migraines. I get migraines from smells. So I am very sympathetic to people who are suffering from that. But in terms of order of operations and what we should think about, my suggestion would be to dig a little bit more into what's already been done in terms of the toxicity. And then hopefully that this move in 18 months will mitigate some of the smell issues that everybody has been facing. So those are my two comments.
Mayor?
Can you hear me now again?
Much better.
I moved a couple of miles over. So anyway, the moving part, I've heard that 2 or 3 times now. That's part of the plant is moving out there. We're still going to be in operation on University, but at about 25% of our past production rate. It'll be still producing emulsions at that plant until we have another phase, be able to move some more of the plant over there. The toxicity, we have all the reports that you need from studies, and I'm not a chemical engineer, but we've had numerous studies by chemical engineers, and we have an expert in the field actually in our heritage research. She's been for asphalt fumes awards throughout the country. We can get you the information you're asking for on the toxicity part of it.
Thank
the
you.
odor part is a different issue. Like I tell you, we think we have the best system going, and obviously it doesn't work all the time. A very small part of, we capture probably 90% of the fumes. If 10% get away from us, that's enough for some people to smell them. I also want to go back and I'm not saying that, I understand some people have much better smell than others, but I find it very hard to believe that we'd be in operation anywhere in the country or any asphalt terminal ever be in the country if it was causing nosebleeds and some of the severe ailments you said. And I'm not going to argue those facts. I'm not here to dispute anything. But I can tell you there are 12 other asphalt terminals in Illinois right now in residential areas, a lot of them, and 3 major refineries, all producing asphalt, and I don't know if any of those are capturing any of their fumes whatsoever. So we're interested in working with the community. I want you to know that we are not blowing this off. We know we got a problem. We're going to take and deal with the problem, and we'll continue talking to you. And you're welcome for the tours. And if you got some agency you want to run in there to do the testing, we're down for the year until March. We shut down beginning of last week or Monday, whenever it was. That was our last day of shipments, and all of our heaters are down. Everything is down, but we'll be firing back up in March sometime. So you're more than welcome to bring them in and run them on our systems. I think we've had that done numerous times. I can't tell you how long ago it was, but as soon as we put the system in, we had EPA, we had other people come there and collect the fumes coming off of the units. We'll work with you on whatever we can do until we can get the problem solved. If we find a better technology, we'll put it in there. We want to be as good as we can to the neighborhood. I wish we could move quicker myself. But I would also like to tell you, we've moved used to move 300 to 400 rail cars through that plant. And we've cut that down to less than 50 now. We have taken a lot of the production out of that facility when it allows us to. So, and I want to make sure that everybody knows we'll take and talk to anybody who wants to talk to them, or I will, and I'll get you the experts on it from our other facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Byers.
Yeah.
That's greatly appreciated. Yes, thank you.
Okay, Mayor, and then Councilmember Sachs.
Wanted to add a little bit of information to what already has been presented. I just want to also make it clear that there was some misconception. The expansion of this plant is not at the current site. The expansion is up north of the interstate on Lincoln Avenue in the industrial park. And as Mr. Byers mentioned, the neighbors at that location are heavy industry, which is where this plant belongs ultimately, and that's the intent for them to go there. Just a reminder, the City Council approved the special use permit for expansion at the Saline Court site, and that was at the January 22nd, 2019 meeting. So if you want to go back to the meeting archive, you can get the memo. I think it's 20 or 25 page memo that was produced at the time with a lot of information about the plant and what goes on there. So that's a good source of information. The building permits for the new facility or the expansion up there were issued in July and August of 2020, so just recently. So construction should get underway soon, but it did take a while to get the permits and everything done and approved, but they have been approved. And the intent, of course, is to move, in addition to the rail cars being decreased there's a whole lot less truck traffic that you will see there over over the coming years when they do move the plant. I spoke with Mr. Byers, I think it was Friday last week when I started learning about the complaints. And as he noted, we did tour the plant before COVID. Well, it was last summer, I believe, we toured the plant, which was actually interesting to see. But it seems to me that it sounds like the emissions that are causing the most problems recently are related to a process, the burn-off process, and the chemicals that are, or the compounds that are involved in that burn-off process. So that's where I would like to get information on what was being burned, especially this last time around, and if there's a way to, is there an alternative to burning off the leftover sludge or whatever it is you're burning off? If there's an alternative to that, I think that would go a long way to reducing the noxious fumes that people are experiencing. So that's one of the pieces of information we'll try to get. I appreciate Mr. Byers' willingness to work with the city, and he's always answered every question when we called, and he's been very open to working with us. So,
Mayor, can I interrupt for a second? It's 10:29.
Yes. Sure, I'm done.
No, I was just going to say we need a motion if we're going to continue this meeting.
Could I get a motion to continue the meeting?
I'll go ahead and make the motion. I'm not sure what time we should continue until 11.
I think so.
All right, I'll make a motion to continue the meeting until 11.
Second.
Okay, motion from Mary Alice, second from Charisse. Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
No.
Mr. Miller.
Yes. And with that, motion passes. Meeting is extended until 11. Mr. Councilmember Sachs, you had raised your hands prior to us moving on. Did you want to say something?
So I'd like to ask a question about the odor problem, if that's okay.
Go right ahead. Is that a question?
Oh, yeah. So,
to Mr. Byers?
So it's a question maybe for Dennis. So our predominant winds are out of the southwest, and looking at the map, it would seem that if the winds were out of that direction, then the fumes should go over areas where there isn't any housing. And so I'm wondering if this problem occurs when the winds are still, or when the winds are not out of the southwest, which is infrequent. And if that is the case, then the question for Rick would be, is one option to mitigate the problem during the transition to the move north, to limit the process that causes the problem to only when there are significant winds out of the southwest? So, my question.
Well, if that's to me, a lot of the winds we get are from the west. Whether they're from the southwest or not, I do not know about that. I'm not a meteorologist, but I'm aware of the condition when I smell it, and so are my neighbors. Some days it seems to be on calm days, and other days it seems to be windy. I've had a complaint during this last couple of days from a woman who lives to the north up on Brownfield Road. But it related more to her traveling in on University Street in that area. But she took her car to the car wash, which is to the west of the plant. So wherever the wind blows, the smell will follow. So there we go. It's uncontrollable. I don't know if you can regulate it ahead of time, whether they can schedule things based on the weather forecast. It's a thought that might mitigate something. People to the west may receive more issues. I don't know.
Mr. Byers,
my neighborhood is right against the railroad tracks, right against the emulsicoat plant. It's a very inopportune place to have a working asphalt plant right in the middle of a neighborhood, practically downtown. So, I mean, yeah, it's right behind Albert's, right behind Schnucks, basically. So,
Mr. Byers, do you want to have a quick comment about wind and timing?
Wind would definitely play an answer, but our process goes on all summer long. I mean, it doesn't quit. We're kicking out loads to all over the state. It's amazing that they're still smelling it because we haven't got any heat on. No tanks are moving. All the tanks are stagnant right now. How we're getting the smell, I'm not quite sure. But and the one we were talking about, when we talk about burning off, what it is, it's a typical emulsion that's used every day for an attack coat. It's an SS1H that when we talk about burn off, all we do is take the water back out of the emulsion. You heat it up where the water boils out. It's not a burning up, or it's not anything what you're thinking of. It's boiling water out of asphalt where it's back to an asphalt phase. And anytime after it hits 225 or 230, it's back to asphalt again. So it's not really what you're considering a burning off. It's a boiling off of water and steam. And that one there, you won't have to worry about. We will not do that one again. At that plant, I can only tell you that. It's not a complicated process, but we can do something else with that material. If we have to haul to a landfill, we can do that. We don't like doing that, but it can also be used mixed and put on some type of road application someplace maybe later. But it wasn't a large quantity. That's the reason that we decided to go ahead and do it.
Okay.
So,
all right. Thank you, Mr. Byers.
Yep.
All right. Dennis, you feeling comfortable with resolution to this discussion topic before we move forward?
Well, yeah, we've gotten two things from it. A promise that the burn off won't be occurring at this plant anymore, which I think is a great thing for the neighborhood. And the second one is that we're going to be, Mr. Byers is offering to share the test data that has been done not only by the Illinois EPA, but also from a national research institute that specializes in making these tests. So if you'd be able to share that with our staff to be reviewed or checked, that would be of use too, and answer some of Mary Alice Wu's comments and concerns.
Okay.
Who should I address this to, or who wants to take the lead on it, or I can get this person to contact which person? Dennis, will it be you? You know,
It might as well be, and I'll forward it to our.
You can send it to Mayor's office, to our office.
Right.
We'll get it out to everybody.
That's fine. We'll do that. I'll get and Linda Osborne, I think, will be the lead on that over there at that research lab. So we'll get that information coming probably next week.
All right, good. I think this at least allows the neighbors of the Huner neighborhood to understand the process, and they've had an opportunity to register a lot of concerns. So thank you so much.
All right, we're gonna move on. We'll see what we can get through with the remaining time that we have on these, because both are probably complex topics, and we've nearly run out of time. But let's see what we can get done. The next discussion item is a resolution regarding the implementation of gender-inclusive language in official written and verbal communication by the city of Urbana. This was brought by myself with support from Dennis, but really was the priority and brainchild of former council member Julie Laut. She sent me this resolution some time ago, and I took some time to work on it with her and add some additional language and clean some things up, and finally got it ready to bring it forward to council for consideration. We didn't have enough time for legal to really take a look at it and decide if everything that was in it was ready to go, with the same as the next discussion item that will follow this. So we're in discussion about it. I think given the nature of the climate, most of us are pretty familiar with the issues surrounding gender-neutral language and pronouns and so on and so forth. So I won't belabor the point of why those things are extraordinarily important for the city to take a lead on, but I would entertain conversation from folks about the resolution, how they see supporting it. If anyone wants a little further information, I did send an elaboration to Dennis about what I think Julie Laut and myself were hoping to intend to do with this. It is a resolution mainly intended to offer an overarching direction to the city that we'd like to see these things implemented. I think that the real implementation that's described in the resolution will take years and will take many ordinances to change many different parts of our city code and our processes, develop a policy, things of that nature. But it'd be more of, this is a formal recognition that we want to make that happen and make it a priority for the city to enact that. So with that, let's open up the discussion. Anybody want to, Mary Alice, go ahead.
So I have a couple of questions. The first one is, is the aim to be gender neutral or is the aim to be gender inclusive?
I think the aim of the ordinance is to utilize, I would say that those things are nearly synonymous. I think that the easier thing to do personally is to be neutral in all circumstances where it makes sense to, in any instances where you would use a he or she or he/she. I said some of these instances to Dennis in the city code that you would just replace those with they. I think that's easier than adding he, she, they to a lot of different things because the they incorporates both. But, I think that goes either way.
So my initial thought is I think it would be much easier to change it to gender neutral. And I saw this resolution, but it's been a while since I've looked at it, so I apologize if this is in there. But in the discussion item, you say that the official language, an official written and verbal communication. So obviously, I think it's much quicker to be able to address verbal communication because that can just be direction to staff. That communication with people use a gender neutral term. In terms of the official written item, that's the city code. And are there other items aside from the city code that the intent was supposed to address?
Yeah, in the proposed resolution, it also mentions utilizing gender inclusive or gender neutral language in basically anything that we would see in council. So ordinance language, resolution language, things of that nature would also include that as well. It's changing the code. I think it's also intended to, in any instances in which there are official policies of the city, that would be included in updates to those as well.
So I think that if we kind of take the low-hanging fruit, I think that certainly giving direction to staff to use gender-neutral language as they communicate with the public, having anything that comes up in terms of if we're going to do changes to code, we can automatically insert that, make that change at the same time. I think it'll be much longer if we sit and we rewrite all of it. So I guess my proposal would be in terms of written communication, that would be direction to staff. And then in terms of any policy updates, any code updates, that we start including that in everything as we move forward. And then we start to go backwards. Sure. But I think that those would be what I would be. I mean, I'm supportive of the resolution as a whole, but I think in terms of implementation, that's the piece that I'm trying to figure out right now.
Sure, and I don't think Julie or myself envisioned that we would, tackle this in one massive ordinance that would try to change all of the city code at once, but it would kind of be piecemeal. We take all new things that come in, and then when we adjust things, or if this, if the city chooses to make a priority over certain items, then we can focus on those as they come up. But yeah, I don't think it was meant to be everybody all at once. Mayor?
Couple of things. One, I wanted to point out when we rewrote Chapter 3 of the Liquor Code, we tried very, very hard to keep it gender neutral. There may have been a spare, a him or her get through, but the intent was to use they, them as much as possible or the participant or the licensee, to refer to people that way. So that is an example of what we can do and have done already, but what we can do going forward. I'm not sure how one goes about rewriting the entire city code or replacing every term in the city code, which is huge. So I wondered if that's one thing we need to understand. If Dave, you're still here, has an idea of what approach one could take for looking at our city code.
One, I didn't get a chance to mention it, but I did some preliminary research on that, and I did find through a simple search term on Municode of the word she, 49 instances of a he/she or a he or she mentioned in the city code. So I think it might be easier than we think to at least isolate where they are. How we change all of those, I think, is a question. Bill, did you want to add something to that?
Well, I know that Municode, the company that manages our code, basically does offer some services. I don't know if they offer gender inclusive language editing services, but they do make minor edits to the code as necessary and make sure it conforms to state law and insert references and stuff like that. So I'd check with them. They may have a program where they just go through your code and basically scrub it. And like Jared was saying, it's not that hard to do a search and find he, she, and then, you know, you can't just do a search and replace, but there may be 100 spots or something, but I don't think we'd have to actually approve the changes. I think it's something that they could just do editorially, but you'd have to check with them, and maybe the attorney knows. But if they don't offer that service, you could suggest that they offer it, because that's the type of thing they do. And you know, maybe they could offer it as a paid service for other communities as well.
And I have one other question. Something that I think needs to be thought about is we send a lot of correspondence, and we, you know, address it, Dear Mr. Smith or Dear Ms. Jones. Is there a guide for how you do that?
If I could just, I wanted to mention this too. If you Google, you could probably find it. United Nations Gender Inclusive Language actually has a fairly decent, I'd call it a guide that kind of goes through a lot of suggestions about how to make it gender inclusive or gender neutral.
I can send that to you, Diane. I actually used some of the language that was in the United Nations resolution bill in this. The first two introductory paragraphs I took from part of their introduction. So they have a very comprehensive document about how to implement that, because they did the same thing in all of their communications and their policies. The United Nations did. So there's an invaluable resource, and I can send it to you for sure. All right, okay. Other discussion? Dennis?
So as a kind of an offshoot of this consideration, we have now most often received communication from the public where individuals will say, I like to be addressed he, she, or she, they, or whatever these appellations are currently being used in the transgender or gay community. So I guess what I'm wondering is, I think it really makes sense to talk about elder persons or community members or citizens instead of he, she, or, you know, whatever, as a way of being inclusive and gender neutral. What are we going to, are the people who are using he, she, or she, her, slash, you know, names, are expecting to have any other kind of address when being addressed by us in conversation? Because it would seem really awkward to be using that back to them. So I just wonder what's being achieved by these this nomenclature.
And I had sent a response to you, Dennis, that I wasn't exactly sure. Are you unsure of whether or not we're supposed to respond to people when they ask to be addressed in a certain way, that they be addressed in that way?
I would assume we wouldn't, that we would assume that we would take a general neutral position and speak with either their name or citizen or community member or whatever. But I thought it might be an interesting thing to just discuss briefly.
I think if people make it known, especially people who are including pronouns in their name description to us as participants, certainly they're indicating to us that would be their preference. My personal philosophy is, generally speaking, if I'm not personally familiar with you, I always try to use a general neutral term to either refer to someone or to communicate with them, unless they've made it clear to me who or how they identify, and then I know and I feel comfortable doing so. And I think that's more on us than anything. I don't know that we need to adopt anything official in order to enact on that. Charisse?
I guess the one question that I have is that when a person, someone prefers a particular pronoun, her, for example, is it improper? Is it rude? Is it disrespectful that if they are called Miss, Mrs., or those particular titles, or if they prefer, if they've already kind of told you by putting in their signature he, her, is it to be implied that then I can refer to you, because I try not to call people by their first names when I don't know them, unless they tell me you can call me by my first name, or should it be, dear citizen Abby, or something like that, or dear, community member Abby, or if they've already determined, they've kind of told you, I like being called her, she. Does that take out the Miss, Mrs., Ms. thing?
I only caught part of it because you were breaking up, Charisse.
What's up with my internet tonight? Okay. Can you hear me?
I can. I caught most of the end of it. Or was the question about whether or not to use a gender neutral term if someone has asked you to use a gendered term to refer to them?
Yeah, kind of. Like, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. If someone has put in their signature, let's say there's a name, Abby Clark. Underneath that name, you can hear me now, can you? Underneath that name is her, she, her. Is it improper or disrespectful for me to refer to that person as Ms. or Mrs. or Miss Clark?
I think that my instinct is to say no. And for anyone who's listening, I'm not the expert on this. This is something I'm familiar with from my personal interactions with friends and people I know close in my life. So I feel like I know a bit about it, but I'm not the end all be all of repository of knowledge on this issue. But Miss, Mrs., those to me are gendered female. So if somebody said, her, she, and said that those are my preferred pronouns, I don't think that they would take offense to a Miss or a Mrs. Reference. I don't really see that come up in people's conversations a lot. I'm not 100% sure, but my instincts tell me, that if you're preferring a female gendered pronoun, that a Miss or a Mrs. would go along with that, and that would be okay.
Well, I say that because, you know, I know it's a with black folks, because we were called gal and boy for so long. We kind of have worked for hundreds of years to be called Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. You know, and I'm trying to intersect somehow these two different cultures that, of course, are going to intersect from time to time. So I just want to be as respectful of someone else as I would expect them to be toward me regarding the same kind of thing.
What I can do, Charisse, is let me reach out to some folks and try and find a better answer. And
I have some friends I can probably ask on Facebook and stuff, but
yeah, sure. Well, and we should all take personal responsibility to find out, you know, as much as we can about these issues. But you know, if there's general consensus amongst council that they would support an actual version of this resolution that we get to vote on and do that, I'd like to get that from folks since we're about out of time.
no, I support that. That's no problem.
Mayor, you're muted.
In reading through the text, I'm seeing I'm going back to the issue raised a couple minutes ago. I'm seeing the words gender neutral, gender fair, gender inclusive in your introductory, and at the under the now therefore, I'm seeing gender inclusive as being the term that you're using here. So can you please send the definition as you understand it of those terms so that it's understood what the intent of the resolution is, so it's much more, so that it's clear to people.
Sure, and there could be, we can probably clean some of that up too.
Well, it'd be good to be consistent if you have a term.
Absolutely. Councilmember Sachs?
I think it's clear our goal is to be as respectful as possible. And so perhaps for the public comment section in the agendas that get handed out, we could ask people to be clear as to whether they would like to be referred to as Ms. or Mr. or whatever. And this way we'll know. And also we might have a statement saying if there is no preference, we will probably then take a gender neutral approach. And this way there's some ground rules so people can tell us what they would prefer if they'd like to.
Sure. Other quick votes before we run out of time here on support. Mary Alice?
I just wanted to say two things. The first one is that the current resolution wasn't in my packet, which is why I hadn't seen the existing version, but I'm happy to work with you on kind of streamlining some of this. So since Julie's not here, I'm happy to work on it.
Thanks for your offer. Dennis?
Yeah, it might be of value to bring this back to our next committee of the whole so that we can see like an updated thing with some definitions. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, we're working on it, but maybe it's not quite ready to call baked yet. You know, it's not finished yet.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, with the remaining 4 minutes that we have, I think that I'm just going to ask for a motion in a second to send the last item to the next City Council meeting as a discussion item. The addition of council input agenda item and reordering of the regular agenda. I'd like to see if I can get a motion to send that to the next one.
Certainly, I'll do that. Let's send the discussion about addition to council input agenda item and reordering of the regular agenda to our next meeting of the committee of the whole.
Motion by Dennis. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. We're sending it to committee of the whole for discussion. Is that correct?
Yeah. I would prefer that it went to City Council, not to committee of the whole.
So the next meeting, just to be clear, we're not meeting next Monday, right? So
We are meeting next Monday.
Are we meeting next Monday?
No, there's no council meeting next Monday. So this should go to a committee meeting for discussion first.
It seems like it should. We haven't had a chance.
I guess, yeah, you're right. We haven't discussed it. Okay, so next committee meeting then.
It's coming.
Yes.
Bill Colbert, discussion?
I've just got a comment. I find it very rich. I think karma has bit us that the last discussion item is council comments at the end of meetings, when here it is a few minutes before 11. Frankly, there was a commenter earlier in public comment that mentioned that when citizens are limited to 4 minutes, maybe council members should be held on a diet too. I think our eyes are bigger than our stomachs, and I think that we should probably give serious consideration about maybe limiting our discussion and limiting the debate so we can get through agenda items so it's not 11 o'clock every Monday night. This is the first time I've said something publicly. I've talked to people privately about this, but I can guarantee you as we go through this discussion, you're going to hear more about this item from me.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any other quick comments before we get a vote? Okay, clerk, did you please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes. And that motion passes, and that will take that discussion item to the next committee of the whole meeting. And with no further business before this body, we will call the meeting adjourned.
Good night, everybody.